Pirates Full Level System, Chapter 401-420. Chapter 401 Kizaru was caught. The fight between Akainu, Kizaru, and Eidu has been going on for more than a minute, and the undead who have been deliberately showing themselves gracefully are now a little anxious. The undead's empty eye sockets and expressions are still like a pool of stagnant water, and there is no change, but the movements of the hands have begun to become rapid. While maintaining the death field, you have to fight two enemies who are at the peak of Vice Admiral's level. If you continue to fight like this, not only will your energy be exhausted, there are no other high-level marine generals around you. If other changes happen, I am afraid I will directly join the battlefield and win myself. Quote. Eidu thought of this, and glanced at the progress of the ghost ship interspersed into the marine fleet. As long as the task of delaying time is completed, as soon as the signal comes, he will immediately find an opportunity to quickly leave the battle. It is indeed extremely difficult for an undead of his level to die, and it does not mean that he has a tendency to be abused. It is not a good experience to be besieged by two people of the same strength. Praise the Lady of Death, your believers are willing to bring 17 more eternal deaths for you, and let this darn time-delaying task end soon. A certain undead prayed silently in his heart. Perhaps it was the devout belief in the heart of a certain soul that touched the heavens. It was a strange thing to say, like the skeleton was moved to tears. No matter how Eidu's inner request was answered, the voice of the Siren Queen suddenly changed, from the previous undead overture to a tempting and extravagant sound. As soon as the singing voice changes, the effect is also immediate. Countless marine soldiers only felt that their little brother suddenly stood up during the battle. So an embarrassing scene appeared. The entire marine fleet had a warship with the ghost ship, and the soldiers above were embarrassed to avoid the attack of the skeleton, while bending over to cover up the ugly marine soldiers. Trousers are all fluffy, which can't stop the whole body, congested and impassioned little brother. An obvious bulge appeared on most marine soldiers who had been lonely for a long time, breaking the original body balance. You said that swords have no eyes on the battlefield. If you accidentally get implicated, the little brother will either be injured or chopped. This is much more serious than hand and foot injuries. Just thinking about it makes me shudder. The new song represents embarrassment to marine soldiers, and to the undead, it's a signal that the ghosts on the ghost ship have all been awakened. The great major eruption attacked by Akainu with a knife, the bone scepter retracted, the demon skeleton on the top of the scepter hit Kizaru, and he himself suffered a light speed kick from Kizaru. Taking advantage of the opportunity of being kicked away by Kizaru's speed of light, Eidu opened his mouth slightly, and issued an order at a frequency that was soft and inaudible to ordinary people. There seemed to be water splashes constantly rolling in his eye sockets without eyeballs, a silent line. The order was thus passed on to the sea. At this time, Akainu and Kizaru were all focused on Eidu, and they also felt that Eidu was approaching the limit. As long as they took some more time, they could take down this undead. At that time, even if the high-level undead can't be killed, it is not what they said to do experiments, braised and steamed. There is a large area of sea around the warship where Akainu, Kizaru, and Eidu are located, and other marine warships are subconsciously staying away from this marine warship, fearing that the battle of these three will spread to other warships. Suddenly, two tentacles sprang out from the sea on both sides of the warship. Each tentacle was about 5 or 6 meters thick, and there were sharp teeth on the surface of the tentacles. If there is a prey caught by the tentacles, even if it is not pinched to death, it will be cut all over by these teeth. The two tentacles were clearly aimed at Akainu and Kizaru, respectively. The tentacles are like eyes. No matter how the two dodge and hide their breath, the tentacles are drawn straight towards the place where the two are. Akainu relied on the high temperature and lava to barely repel the tentacle that attacked him. At this moment, the thick fishy smell and the aroma of grilled octopus filled Akainu's side. A strange combination. Akainu felt like he was going to vomit anyway. Kizaru was not so lucky. When the tentacles just came out, Kizaru not only focused on Eidu, but because he and Eidu had been at war for a while, his physical strength was not as good as Akainu. The tentacle sprang out from the sea, and it came suddenly and very quickly, and Kizaru's chest was slapped hard by the tentacle. This blow was not only powerful, but it pulled Kizaru from the deck of the marine battleship to the bottom of the ship. The teeth on the tentacles made a cut in Kizaru's stomach. The tentacle's goal is to capture or kill Kizaru, and although it was drawn just now, the goal was not reached. Tentacles stubbornly slammed through the Vice Admiral marine battleship from the sea, and rolled towards Kizaru, who was hit to the bottom of the ship. Kizaru was lying on the bottom of the boat, looking at the steel plates that had been smashed by him layer by layer on his head, only to feel that his whole body was broken. Kizaru was just about to lie down for a while, when the huge movement of the tentacles slamming through the bottom of the boat came, and Kizaru knew in an instant that something was wrong. That monster is here again, vomit. Kizaru forced him to stand up, and he forced his body into a fluid state to leave. However, in the death field of Aedu, it is not so simple to want to be elemental, but it drives the injury in the body, and spit it out with a mouthful of old school. A while, the tentacles have come to the edge of 863 Kizaru. Kizaru knows that he must not be caught by tentacles. This is the bottom of the boat. He was brought into the sea by the monsters in this sea. Even if he ate the devil fruit, even 10 lives were not enough. Even though he did his best to dodge, after dashing out of the hole he had smashed through, Kizaru was slowed down on the deck due to his injuries and was caught by tentacles. The tentacles wrap Kizaru layer by layer, and the tentacles have a special fishy smell of mucus and seawater. After being soaked by the seawater as a devil fruit power user, Kizaru was completely paralyzed and powerless under the action of the death domain. The strong compressive force of the tentacles and the sharp teeth on the tentacles made Kizaru truly understand what is called cork on a cutting board, what is called as heavy as a mountain, and what is called 1,000 cuts. After Kizaru almost lost consciousness, the tentacles did not rush to kill Kizaru, as if they were having fun. The tentacles stopped compressing Kizaru and took Kizaru to dive into the sea. Akainu wanted to rescue, but was entangled by Aedu. Aedu smiled, and this undead would also laugh when he showed others their undead for the first time. Not surprisingly, they had to get the body of Glint Glint fruit in this round, so Governor A laughed happily. It's not going to be smooth sailing, though, and it's the same for marine or ghost ship undead. Chapter 402 Paul. Just when Kizaru was about to be taken into the sea by tentacles, the rescuer has arrived. Ice Age. With Kuzan's calm voice, the ice crystals filled the sky. The white ice block spread out from Kuzan's hands and rushed towards the tentacles that grabbed Kizaru. After entering the field of death, the speed of the white ice block's expansion was noticeably slowed down. A ray of light flashed in Kuzan's eyes. His expression did not change, but he increased the output of the freezing ability in his hand. The expansion speed of the white ice crystals resumed the previous speed after a pause. Carrying Kizaru were frozen before successfully retracting into the ocean floor. The tentacles that wrapped Kizaru in layers also lost their previous vitality. Kuzan transformed into a 2-meter-long ice blade in his hand, and used several shaws to come to the frozen tentacles. With the inertia of high-speed movement, the ice blade slid across the frozen tentacles, and the tentacles like icicles instantly turned into countless segments. Each tentacle turned into smaller fragments, and finally dissipated into the air. And Kizaru leaked out after a certain tentacle shattered and fell on the frozen sea. Who had rescued Kizaru, fell to the ice after the slash, and Kizaru, who had recovered from the layers of tentacles, also landed on the side. I'm really not suited to use a sword. Kuzan looked at the ice blade in his hand that was broken in two. In order to smash the frozen tentacles with one blow, Kuzan has used the hardest ice as a material to condense the ice blades. At least in terms of strength, the ice blade Kuzan just used has surpassed most famous knives. But now this extremely hard and extremely strong ice blade has become a memory, completely broken into two pieces. Kuzan knew it wasn't the ice blade itself, but his slashing skills, his understanding of the sword. Who is Kuzan? In the past, when he was in trouble, he just ignored it. This time, 2. Since he couldn't use a sword, Kuzan decided not to use a sword anymore. These thoughts only flashed in Kuzan's mind, and soon he turned his attention back to Kizaru, the object of his trip to save lives. At this time, Kizaru was covered in bruises and blood red, and he couldn't tell where the wound was. A thin ice enveloped Kizaru, stiffening Kizaru's entire body, and also froze the blood from Kizaru's body wounds, temporarily stopping the bleeding. I didn't expect Kizaru to be injured so badly, so even if I help him thaw now, his injury will make him unable to participate in the next battle. Seeing Kizaru's injury clearly, Kuzan was quite afraid of the previous tentacle. Moreover, he also discovered that within the scope of the death domain, the ability of the devil fruit was suppressed. I think this is the reason why Kizaru did not dodge in time, and was succeeded by tentacles one after another. Thinking for a while, Kuzan brought Kizaru to Marshal Kong to seek treatment. As one of Marine's main combat powers, Kizaru can't just be compromised here. Who stopped Akainu, was very angry when he saw that someone came to rescue Kizaru. But seeing that Kuzan, who came to rescue Kizaru, is a person with the ability to freeze fruit, in addition to being angry, Governor A showed strong desire and killing intent for the first time. The corpse of the frozen fruit person is his Aidu. In order to keep Kuzan, Aidu opened his mouth and gave an order to the tentacle's owner. Immediately before Kuzan took Kizaru to leave the death field, the three tentacles sprang out of the sea at the same time, all aimed at Kuzan, rather than competing for the unconscious Kizaru. The time of the crisis, Kuzan used his ability to create an ice peak. Kuzan stayed on the top of the ice peak and barely escaped from the gap between the three tentacles. Failing a single blow, the three tentacles retracted back to the sea. Currently Kuzan stays in midair stepping on the moon step, but as soon as he lowers a little, the tentacles will attack again. Kuzan's stamina has been consumed by 2 consecutive explosions of devil fruit abilities in the death field. He also had to take a wounded man to Marshal Kong's car with the moon step, which might be a bit of a pain in Kuzan's current state. Kuzan only felt that the Kizaru in his hand had become a hot potato, and he didn't dare to let it go. You are controlling the monsters under the sea, the undead. Akainu said his guess in a huff as he attacked. This undead was also distracted by controlling the sea monster to deal with other people during the battle with his Akainu. This is how much he looks down on him Akainu, especially when that person is still Kuzan. The main reason was that the abnormality of Aidu was too obvious, and in front of Akainu, he gave orders to the monsters under the sea in an inaudible way. Even an idiot could guess that Aidu was commanding a monster with tentacles in the distance. Du ignored Akainu, but Akainu was absolutely right. The owner of the tentacles is a half-fleet-sized black shadow lurking below the marine fleet, the ancestor of the deep-sea monsters, an octopus-type sea king variant called Paul by the Ghost Fleet. Paul is the earliest octopus-type Neptune variant, and the subsequent deep-sea monsters are considered his descendants. Monsters like Paul will grow an extra tentacle every 10 years from birth, and the tentacles will grow in size every 100 years. At present, Paul already has hundreds of tentacles, which is why Paul can reach half the size of the marine fleet after spreading all the tentacles. All in all, ghost ships, undead and deep-sea monsters sound like a good match, don't they? Chinluo must have never imagined what terrifying monsters he awakened from the wrecked waters. Since these monsters are awake, it is impossible for them to obediently go back to sleep so easily. Marine's last patience was worn out, and Marshal Kong sent Zephyr, Garp and the other Vice Admiral out to destroy the undead. And Zephyr went to meet Kuzan, and Garp, who was not a devil fruit person, went to trouble Aidu. Fistbone extra large iron ball. With an angry shout, the Garp people were still on their way, and an oversized black shadow quickly slammed into the governor of Ae. Governor Ae hurriedly protected him with a black shield, but who could tell him why such an extra-large shell was flying over? It is impossible for a human-sized black shield to completely block such a large thing. At the moment when Aidu used the black shield to contact the two large iron ball, the black shield absorbed part of the momentum, and the rest directly knocked Aidu into the air. Inside. After the smoke and dust of the explosion dissipated, Governor A stood on the sea covered in bruises and wounds. The death field had dissipated. His last strength was used to repair himself, and he finally restored the rotten flesh of his body to a human form. Chapter 403 Monster Siege. The situation on the field was reversed in an instant. Originally, Akainu and Kuzan were in danger, but now Aidu has become a lost dog. From the moment the Death Realm dissipated, the strange power that limited the abilities of Akainu and Kuzan's devil fruit also disappeared. Kuzan and Akainu only felt refreshed for a while, the energy that had been suppressed in their bodies for a long time spurted out, and the sky and mist in the sea area where they were both dyed red and blue. Monster, look at this old man if you don't knock your bone scum into powder, so you don't come out again to be scary. Garp was not affected by the death field. Before the huge iron ball hit Aidu, Garp was already moving fast. Therefore, it is not surprising that Garp is now appearing next to Aidu faster than Akainu. In a cluster of black smoke that had not completely dissipated beside Aidu, Garp's right fist-wrapped armament hockey shattered the smoke and hit Aidu's face. Aidu smiled helplessly, his energy consumption was almost the same, and his perception decreased a lot, and it was not until Garp got to him that he realized it. Aidu's current physical condition is naturally unable to prevent this punch. Garp's fist bone meteor hammer hit Aidu firmly on the left face, and Aidu, who had just stood at 393, was knocked out again. After smashing through 2 marine warships and 3 ghost ships in a row, Aidu's retreating figure stopped on the last ghost ship. However, the ghost ship, which was the landing site of Aidu, was also completely shattered in the violent impact and slowly sank into the sea. Aidu lay on the fragments of the ghost ship, unable to move, and all the flesh on his left cheek disappeared. With Garp's full punch just now, the meat on Aidu's left face turned into minced meat and disappeared into the air, leaking all the bones inside, and there were some slight cracks on the leaked bones. It hurts the body, so this punch won't stop. Aidu felt the strange feeling coming from his left face. As an undead, he naturally wouldn't have the luxury of pain, but the body injury would still make him feel uncomfortable. He is very uncomfortable. A large amount of black substance flowed from the mouth of the demon skeleton on the top of the bone scepter in his hand, wrapping Aidu. He doesn't have enough energy to repair his own injury, especially if the injury has spread to his body. Although the thick fog filled the air, Aidu was shot far away by Garp. However, Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan had already locked in the breath of Aidu. As long as it was less than 1 kilometer, the observation hockey of the 3 could instantly find Aidu. Garp's move just hit directly. Except for Luyun and Chin Luo, no one was safe and sound. Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan estimated that Aidu could no longer stand up. With the intention of cutting the grass and rooting, the 3 ran directly to the direction of Aidu. Even if Aidu could still move, they would give him the final blow. Garp uses Moon Step and Shave alternately in succession, with the air and marine battleships as the pedals to walk in the front. Akainu turned into a flying meteor and followed Garp. After Kuzan handed Kizaru to Zephyr, an ice crystal sprang up on the surface of his feet like a skateboard and shot Kuzan away. Aidu stood up. The injury on his body has been repaired, and the black matter has disappeared without a trace, but I don't know if it is an illusion. The white bone scepter before has become bleak this time, and the demon skeleton on the top of the scepter has appeared. Slight cracks. Looking at Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan who were approaching, Aidu had a grim expression, and had the urge to tear the 3 of them to pieces. Considering that his strength has not fully recovered, Aidu forcibly suppressed his inner thoughts. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, Aidu's eye sockets, which were about to burst into flames, turned into a stagnant silence after closing and opening his eyelids. Aidu's mouth opened slightly, and the silent instructions were conveyed one by one. Bone is hard, but I think you can take a few punches. Return all the humiliation just now, Great Major Eruption. Ice Age. Garp, Akainu and Kuzan surrounded Aidu from 3 directions at the same time, blocking all his escape routes. Garp was fighting fiercely, Akainu was furious, and Kuzan had a biting chill, and he was all out for a split second. "You will all be a tribute to Lady Death." Aidu directly ignored the devastating offensive of the three, and a cold voice came out from his mouth. Just when Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan attacked less than 20 meters away from Aidu, more than a dozen tentacles shot out from the sea like sharp arrows. Each tentacle was 5 or 6 meters thick, instantly crowding the area where the four were. Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan were each besieged by 4 or 5 tentacles, the teeth and barbs on the tentacles giving off this awe-inspiring cold light. Thought that as long as he was drawn once, he would end up with Kizaru. The three felt a chill in their hearts, and they knew that it was no longer realistic to besiege Aidu, and the offensive in their hands fell on the tentacles drawn, temporarily solving the immediate crisis. When the three got rid of the tentacles, siege, and then looked at the place where Aidu was before, they could not see Aidu's figure, and even the wreckage of the ghost ship was gone. At the moment when the tentacle appeared, a tentacle disappeared into the sea with Aidu, and the wreckage was further smashed and sank into the sea. Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan all retreated some distance each to prevent Aidu's surprise attack. However, the raid did not come, and the tentacles who thought they had escaped the attack range once again sprang out of the sea beneath the three of them. Each is surrounded by 6 tentacles. As the space becomes more spacious, the attack of the tentacles becomes more fluid and orderly. These tentacles are like the hands of a person, and they cooperate tacitly. The offensive of the storm falls on the three of them, wave after wave, without stopping. Faced with such an attack, Garp, Akainu, and Kuzan couldn't fight back, just dodging was enough. At this time, Aidu was brought by the tentacle to the body of the tentacle, on the head of the deep-sea monster named Paul. The dark seabed suddenly lit up some light. It turned out that the deep-sea devil who had been silent opened his eyes, and the 8-car-sized eyes exuded a deep yellow brilliance. "Paul, long time no see. Lady Death must have been waiting." Aidu's tone was like seeing an old friend. His hand touched the head of the deep-sea monster. The scene couldn't be more bizarre. What responded to Aidu was the actions of the deep-sea monsters. In the marine fleet, nearly 100 tentacles rose into the sky, and almost every marine battleship would have a tentacle next to it. Chapter 404 Embarrassed Defense. As soon as these tentacles appeared, they frantically slammed the marine warship on the side. The large marine warships were still cut out by these tentacles, and the ordinary small marine warships were even broken into pieces by the tentacles' attack. Even some marine warships were united by multiple tentacles, forcibly dragging the warships into the sea. Once these tentacles succeeded, the lives of marine soldiers on the warship were basically gone. In the waters where the marine fleet is now, shipwrecks are almost certainly a continuous occurrence. Once a marine warship is turned into pieces, the marine soldiers on the warship will not have time to go to other warships before they fall into the sea. There is only a dead end waiting for them. The Marines also know how many monsters like deep-sea monsters or ghost ship undead are hidden in the waters below their marine fleet. The marine soldiers who were dragged into the water or unfortunately fell into the water, except for the strength of the commander level, have no chance to escape. From the beginning of the battle to the present, the Marines have lost count of how many soldiers' lives have been swallowed up by the deep sea beneath their feet. It's like there is a demon stationed under this sea area. People who fall into the sea will die and not live. For ordinary marine soldiers, each tentacle is equivalent to a sea king. Both are so huge in size, so destructive in power, so flexible in the sea, and have the same stench. And not only the deep-sea monster named Paul took action, but other deep-sea monsters, 3-headed sea snakes, ghost-headed fish and other sea monsters also emerged from the sea and joined the feast of hunting food. Only the skeletal demon fish with a nature of sneak attack continued to stay in the dark part of the sea, and was only responsible for dealing with the marine soldiers who were transferred to the sea. The killer's most powerful weapon is patience and concealment. Among the many undersea monsters summoned by Qin Luo, the skeletal devilfish is not higher even at the bottom. But regardless of the number or the survival of the group, the skeletal devilfish far surpassed several powerful creatures that were among the best. So this play is really not easy to act. Marine warship where Chin Luo was located was also being attacked by two tentacles. Looking at the tentacles that can be solved with a single knife or even a single sentence. Now as a Sato Lieutenant Commander, he has to show an appearance that I can't deal with. The strong stench makes Chin Luo feel sick to his stomach. Marine warship Chin Luo is currently as his Lieutenant Commander. Objectively speaking, he is, absolutely, unable to deal with Paul's tentacles. As a result, this ordinary marine warship still encountered two tentacles, which was really bad luck. Chin Luo is not easy to directly control the place and number of tentacles, and even, Paul, may not be able to confirm where his tentacles appear and who will be attacked. These are random to a certain extent. However, if it wasn't for Chin Luo, the Lieutenant Commander Sato, who, occasionally, broke out before dying, I'm afraid the entire warship would have been dragged into the sea and eaten by other monsters hidden in the sea. In this situation, it is actually the best choice to find Kizaru to rescue various marine warships, but Kizaru is now in a coma with serious injuries, so how can he save people? And this firefighter's job was also arranged by Sengoku and Kong on the other Vice Admiral. Whether the Vice Admirals like it or not, the current form doesn't allow them to think too much. So the fire brigade has been established, but Chin Luo can't guarantee the efficiency. It is estimated that Kizaru will not be able to deal with it alone. Chin Luo's warship is just a microcosm of the entire marine fleet. Similar things are also happening on nearly 100 marine warships, and some warships are even more dangerous than Chin Luo's warships. Continuous screams floated on the battlefield, but the heavy fog made it difficult to see where the shouts came from, which undoubtedly made the uneasy people more violent. At this time, Marine Marshal Kong's car, Marine No. 1 Inch was also facing the danger of being forcibly dragged into the sea. No less than 26 tentacles are besieging Marine No. 1 Inch, of which there are 15 or 6 tentacles belonging to Paul, and the rest are the tentacles of ordinary deep-sea monsters. Marine No. 1 Inch is unusual and powerful among many marine warships. The position of Marine 1 is also in the middle of the entire marine fleet. Those sea monsters weren't mindless, they immediately saw the particularity of Marine No. 1 Inch. Those tentacles and sea monsters are either eager to take credit for their masters, or are looking for more delicious flavors, so who else can you toss with if you don't toss your Marine No. 1 Inch this time? Shockwave. At this time, Sengoku had transformed into the form of a big Buddha, and a shock wave sent a tentacle out with a thunderous castration, preventing the tentacle from entangling Marine No. 1 Inch. It's not going to end like this, Sengoku said to Marshal Kong, panting, seeing that one tentacle had been repelled and another appeared. While talking, the three-headed sea snake found an opportunity to bite at Sengoku. But Sengoku didn't care either. As long as he didn't attack Marine No. 1 Inch, Sengoku was confident that he could slowly solve all these tentacles and sea monsters by himself. The golden Sengoku in the form of the Great Buddha, his physical strength has been raised to a terrifying height, and covered with armament haki, the three-headed sea snake that attacked directly broke his teeth. And Sengoku turned around with a palm, and pulled the three-headed sea snake that had snapped its teeth back into the bottom of the sea. Any better ideas? Kong is a little regretful that he shouldn't be able to take the initiative to send Marine Vice Admiral out before. Now that the huge Marine No. 1 Inch is still being taken care of, only he and Sengoku are the two high-end combat powers who can come out. Response. I saw that these larger tentacles should all belong to a big guy. If we just attack its tentacles, I guess there is only a dead end. After taking a bite from the giant sea monster that came down from above, Sengoku gasped and said to Marshal Kong. Shigen, finger pistol. You mean to attack the body of these tentacles? Marshal Kong used Shigen, finger pistol, to cut off a smaller tentacle that was 2 or 3 meters thick and looked at Sengoku. Yes. It's not that Sengoku's words are like gold, but that he's fighting 3 tentacles this time. Rankyaku, Tempest Kick Battle Axe. Kong didn't rest, and immediately went to help Sengoku clear the siege after finishing the monster in his hand. Kong is in a hurry. If this continues, even if these monsters are eliminated, most of the entire marine fleet will be pulled by these monsters to be buried with them. Chapter 405. A different Akainu. Seeing the worried and angry look on Marshal Kong's face, Sengoku knew what Kong had in mind. After a shock wave from his right palm sent a tentacle flying towards the cab, Sengoku said to comfort Kong, "Don't worry, the two of us are here right now. Even if we have any plans, we can't carry out any plans, we should wait for them to come back first." "Well, I've already sent the signal." Sengoku's mouth naturally refers to Garp, Kuzan and Akainu. As for the firefighting team composed of the rest of Marine Vice Admiral, it's not that Sengoku doesn't look down on their strength, but that the current Marine fleet really needs this firefighting team, otherwise his plan will not need to be launched, and the entire Marine fleet will be soaked to the bottom of the sea. As for signaling, Sengoku didn't talk nonsense. When he saw so many tentacles besieging Marine No. 1 inch, Sengoku knew that he and Marshal Kong could not defend the flagship of the Marine at all. The previously agreed flares were fired. When Garp went to rescue Kizaru, Sengoku told Garp that tonight was not easy, and told him to watch the flares. With Sengoku's request, and in the misty night sky, the flares of colored lights were quite conspicuous, so Garp wouldn't miss it. "Kuzan, Akainu, listen to me, there might be an accident on Marine 1, and we need a courier to get back." Garp was covered in armament hockey, and just when he was trying to get hit directly by the tentacle, he forcibly smashed the two tentacles that were pinching him one after the other. Garp's left and right fists were condensed with extremely thick armament hockey, and the two tentacles in his fist bones and iron fists first appeared one after another cracks, and then exploded into a rain of flesh and blood. At this time, there were 3 tentacles that had been cut off after being frozen, floating on the sea, and the thick smell of burnt squid permeated the fog that besieged Garp, Kuzan, and Akainu before now only have 7. Kuzan and Akainu dealt 3 each, and the rest were smashed by the stronger Garp. Who fired the flare just now, Marshal Kong or Admiral? Kuzan spewed out ice crystals from both hands, pushed himself to avoid the incoming tentacle while freezing a part of the tentacle, and asked Garp in the gap. The frozen tentacles are very cunning. They leave immediately without giving Kuzan a chance to continue hurting. They retreat into the sea for a while to deal with the frozen ice block and then rejoin the battle. So Kuzan also had a headache, such a cunning monster. If he didn't seize the best opportunity to freeze the entire tentacle, a little frostbite would be useless to the tentacle. "It's Sengoku." Garp panted to avoid the tentacle's siege. He was anxious just now because he saw the signal. Although he fought off 2 tentacles recklessly, he was not feeling well. Concentrated on the front of a tentacle, not only did the armament hockey covered with cracks appear, but the teeth on the tentacle directly penetrated armament hockey, making a hole in his waist. "You're sure?" Akainu's magma-turned right hand helped Garp fend off a tentacle that was about to attack. However, with such a large tentacle, in addition to being a bit unexpected when it suddenly jumped out from the bottom of the sea, it is not easy to think of it when you want to sneak attack outside. Neither Sengoku nor I would be the one to joke around at a time like this, of course. Garp was given a little time to heal and breathe as he watched someone help him fend off an attack. Garp tore off his clothes and wrapped it around his waist, stopping the bleeding temporarily, and then took out Garp's holy medicine from his arms. How is it like a senbei? Akainu didn't think that Garp, the old man, was still playing tricks at this time. Hearing the sound of Garp eating senbei, Akainu just thought he was stupid. Did he run over to help Garp stop it? Tentacle attack. "Thank you, Akainu, would you like a slice?" Garp thanked Akainu for his help, and threw a slice of senbei over. The scene was like a cigar. Akainu caught Garp's senbei with his left hand, and his left hand turned into lava, and the senbei in his hand also turned into coke. Akainu glared at Garp, which obviously meant that you are playing tricks and don't bring others with you. "You come here and leave it to me." Akainu is not a good person, but he also has his own justice and plans in his heart. No matter what, he will not watch the Marine fleet collapse, nor will he give up the opportunity to make contributions. As he spoke, a tentacle sprang out of the sea just below Akainu in vain, and it was like a huge electric drill trying to pierce Akainu. Akainu's entire body turned into lava, and was easily pierced from foot to head by tentacles. However, the magma that Akainu turned into also covered the entire tentacle. Magma condensed at the center of the tentacle, taking the shape of Akainu. The magma-shaped Akainu held the tentacles with both hands and shouted, destroying Gurren. The tentacles covered by the magma glowed red like a hot red iron. Without any struggle, the tentacle was blasted into powder by the magma like a boulder blocking the crater. The red dust shone with black smoke and slowly fell on the sea. Akainu, who had returned to his original form, took a few breaths. Obviously, the move just now was quite expensive for Akainu. Seeing this, Kuzan took the initiative to wrap 130 tentacles in silence. Stepping on the constantly excited ice block as a snowboard, he moved quickly on the tentacles, and the dark blue light condensed on his right hand and pressed it on the tentacles. Ice Age. Not as dangerous as Garp, nor as loud as Akainu. A mountain-shaped iceberg appeared on the sea, and the tentacle could still be clearly seen in the crystal-clear glacier. You're sure? Kuzan's right hand trembled a little when he spoke. In fact, it was the best choice for Akainu and Garp to rush back to Marine 1. With Kuzan's frozen fruit ability, even these tentacles can't be solved for a while, and it's okay to hold them back. And if it's Kuzan, you don't have to worry about the sneak attack of the disappearing Aidu. In the battle on the sea, Kuzan is much better than Akainu. However, Marine 1 also needs Kuzan's abilities. Frozen fruit is an excellent choice for control and protection, which is why Garp doesn't directly oppose it. Go away! Akainu shouted coldly, and then smashed the remaining 5 tentacles with 5 great, major eruptions in a row. Akainu was pulling the monster's hatred. Garp turned around and left, and Kuzan left with a complicated look. Only 5 tentacles left, Akainu is never in danger. Chapter 406 Back to Aid. Tisk tisk tisk, is this the Akainu I know? Chin Luo has been observing Marine's high-end combat power from a distance through Rinnegan. If Chin Luo would not monitor these people so directly, he would be discovered if he was not careful. During the battle now, there are many people with different eyes. Chin Luo can broadcast 24-hour uninterrupted high-definition live broadcast without code as long as he directly throws the creature bound by Rinnegan to the side of the person being monitored. Rinnegan's special ability, Chin Luo can even receive multiple images and messages at the same time without confusion. If I want to talk about the disadvantage, when I use this ability, the pattern of the eyes is too obvious. So in order to avoid being discovered by others, Chin Luo, the fake Sato Lieutenant Commander, found an excellent opportunity. Marine warship where Chin Luo was, all the Marine soldiers thought that the Sato Lieutenant Commander was to save the entire Marine warship and the lives of all the Marines on the warship, so they stepped forward and were hit by a tentacle. Speaking of this, the Sato Lieutenant Commander, at the time was not to mention how miserable it was. A general who was not as strong as a Marine Lieutenant Commander and not armament hockey turned into rotten flesh on his entire face and abdomen after being pulled by a tentacle with a thickness of 5 or 6 meters. After Sato Lieutenant Commander was knocked to the ground by the tentacles, he immediately let out more and less air. A large amount of blood flowed out of the body of Sato Lieutenant Commander, without money. All this is not a temporary idea. Chin Luo was collecting all kinds of blood as early as a few days ago. Now this blood is constantly coming out of the Sato Lieutenant Commander, through special pipes. The blood has been collected for some time, and the color of the blood tends to be dark red, but because of the heavy fog and darkness, ordinary people can't see the abnormality of the blood at all. As for the day, when the blood is about to coagulate, there is no difference. Just as Sato Lieutenant Commander fell unconscious on the front foot, like a drama, the fire brigade arrived. In no time, the tentacles, undead and other monsters on the side of Chin Luo's battleship were all cleaned up. Chin Luo was also taken back to his room for recuperation due to serious injuries, and his surveillance operation was carried out just in time. On the picture in Chin Luo's mind, the firefighters were divided into several teams. The strongest team was currently dealing with the tentacles that appeared, and the weaker ones were dealing with some simple monsters or undead. Although Governor Ae is said to be the number 3 figure in the entire ghost ship fleet, none of the undead who have fought against Marine has his strength. But Marine's biggest trouble now is the deep-sea monster, hull, and everything else can be put aside first. On the deck of Marine 1 was teetering and could not hold on. This warship obviously received special attention from the monster behind the tentacles, with 4 large holes appearing on both sides of Marine number 1 inch. No one would doubt that if there were more holes of this size, Marine 1 would sink into the sea without the tug of tentacles at all. Sengoku and Kong gasped back to back, stunned that they were all focused on defense and didn't have much energy to save. The tentacles fought back one after another, which none of them could have imagined. Sengoku, I'm here to save you. Remember to buy some senbei when you go back, don't break your bill. Before Garp arrived, the voice came first. Worrying about his friends, he was rushing back as fast as he could. Then 2 figures passed through the black night and the permeating fog, and appeared in front of the many soldiers and generals of Marine 1. The soldiers and mid-level generals on Marine 1 were indeed the best in the entire Marine. When Marine number 1 was besieged by so many tentacles and undersea monsters, but only an admiral and a marshal were left with 2 high-end combat powers to deal with. Although these soldiers were a little flustered at first, they were finally able to do it on their own. Organize effective resistance. This is also one of the important reasons why Marine number 1 was able to survive until the return came and was not broken into pieces. Ice Age. As soon as Kuzan appeared, he saw the tentacles dancing like a group of demons beside Marine number 1, and he started with a big move. White ice crystals burst out from Kuzan, first the sea, warships, tentacles, everything was frozen by Kuzan. The tentacles that had sensed danger in advance shrunk into the sea and disappeared before being frozen, but those tentacles that entangled Marine number 1 firmly and were about to drag Marine number 1 into the sea did not have time to run away. Even Marine number 1 was frozen into ice slag before it could be released. Kuzan tapped lightly on his frozen tentacles, and the ice block turned into ice crystals that disappeared into the sky and the earth. I have to say that Kuzan's frozen devil fruit ability is really practical. Kuzan controlled and destroyed several scarred tentacles just after he came back. It also successfully prevented the further siege of Marine 1 by tentacles and monsters in the deep sea. It is better to come early than to come by coincidence. Before, when Kuzan was dealing with 4 or 5 tentacles by himself, it was not easy to destroy one tentacle. No matter it was timing or ability, it was indispensable, and it took a lot of effort and commitment. Risks of. Now that Kuzan came, the 3 tentacles were still entangled in Marine number 1 and didn't have time to withdraw. Just like static targets, they were easily solved. It was embarrassing when Garp arrived. He didn't go at full speed in order to save his stamina. As a result, the troubles of Sengoku and others were almost solved by the time he arrived. However, Kuzan, Garp, Sengoku, and Kong all knew that those tentacles who were scared by Kuzan did not leave, but patiently lurked in the nearby waters, and they might attack again at any time. So the many Marines on Marine 1 and the monsters hiding in the sea entered a deadlock. Such a stalemate is not something that Marine is happy to see, because this stalemate dragged down their 4 high-end Marine forces, and the other party only paid a price for tentacles. As the saying goes, there are only thieves who can be thieves for thousands of days, and there are no thieves who can prevent thieves for thousands of days. I agree with taking the initiative to attack the body of these tentacles. Kong thought for a while, and felt that he should take the initiative to attack. 1. Kuzan, Garp, Sengoku and Kong have all suffered tentacle losses just now. According to Sengoku's analysis, as long as the body of the deep-sea monster is attacked, all those tentacles can be eliminated at once. Soon, with the concerted efforts of the 4, Sengoku locked the location of the deep-sea monster's body. Speaking of which, this position is a bit strange. It's right next to Marine number 1. I think this is the reason why the tentacles on the side of Marine number 1 can keep coming. Chapter 407 Expendables. After estimating the approximate location of the deep-sea monster, Paul, Kong and Sengoku got together again. Sengoku, are you sure this is the position? With the sound of gate of opening, Kong, who entered the war room, asked leisurely while biting his cigar. In the huge war room, only the table where Sengoku was sitting was now lit by a lamp. Because Marine 1 was attacked by a sea monster and received a lot of damage, even if it was not paralyzed, the power supply system had already gone wrong. According to the information from below, the situation of the tentacle branch and the height of the tentacles emerging from the sea, it is true that the body of these tentacles is hidden in this position, but... Sengoku stopped talking and threw some intelligence documents in his hand on the table. How could Sengoku be 100% sure just relying on such a little thing? If these information were deliberately misleading or conspiracy by that monster, Sengoku couldn't imagine the consequences he would face if the plan failed, and he couldn't bear the responsibility. But what? Come on, we don't have time to wait any longer. Marshal Kong walked to Sengoku's side, and as Kong walked in, Kong's current appearance was also illuminated by the lights. There was a cut on the forehead of the right eye. In order not to block the realization, the Marine Marshal, who was always in a fighting state, only handled it lightly and did not bandage it further. Kong was only wearing a 470-piece Field Marshal's cape. His left shoulder and abdomen were wrapped in bandages. A little red bloodshot appeared from the bandage. Obviously, the wound had not completely stopped bleeding. Unlike a kainu, Kong is not a person who usually smokes cigars. As Marshal of Marine, Kong is very strict with his behavior, habits and health. If other elements are excluded, Kong is indeed an excellent soldier. Now this cigar is far more refreshing and pain-relieving to Kong than smoking itself. I'm sorry, but Marshal Kong, I need someone to go under the sea to confirm the location of that monster, and preferably the depth. Sengoku took a deep breath, fully stated his request, and pushed his prepared battle plan to Kong. The subsequent battle plan Sengoku has been completed, but the location of the monster itself cannot be completely determined. There is only one chance for this kind of thing. After the failure, no matter the monster will be vigilant, Marine can't find a second way to hurt the monster in the deep sea. But Sengoku fully understands what it means to send people to the sea at such times, and it is no different from sending them to death. You have to know that there are many horrible things hidden in the sea besides the tentacle monster. If they don't show up, it doesn't mean we can go down. I haven't received a report that any Marine soldier or general has fallen into the sea. Come back alive later. Quote. The red light on the cigar head flickered, and Kong's voice didn't seem to have any emotion, but he was indeed describing a bloody thing. I know. Sengoku felt that he couldn't hesitate any longer, and replied decisively. After a pause, he added, then let me do it. Nonsense. Are you Marine Admiral or the most important, the resourceful general and staff in Marine? The next plan still needs to be arranged by you. I won't let you take risks. Besides, you, a devil fruit person, will lose your body as soon as you touch the seawater. How can you determine the monster's location if you are powerless? Kong had complete trust in Sengoku's ability, and did not intend to read Sengoku's battle plan at all, and directly rejected Sengoku's request to die. But Kong also knew that since Sengoku suggested that someone must confirm the location of the monster, it could not be avoided. Now that Kong didn't waste any time, he said, let Garp go. No, Marshal, as you know, Garp is the most suitable person to carry out the final step of the plan. Make sure that the task is to be handed over to someone else. Sengoku calmly refused Kong's request to let Garp go, not just because the two were on good terms and did not want to let Garp go to die. Sengoku believes more in Garp's ability than others, and feels that Garp can be safe and sound. Sengoku also considered it very early, but Garp is an irreplaceable part of the final plan. Then it's up to me. It's even more impossible. If you had nothing to do with you, Marshal, we would have already lost this war. After being furiously attacked by the sea monster, Sengoku had already felt the cruelty of this inexplicable disaster and directly called it a war. Who else is suitable to go, tell me? Kong had an indescribable irritability, and Kizaru first fell into a coma after being seriously injured. Later, when Akainu took the initiative to break up Kuzan and Garp, when he sent someone to find Akainu had already burned all those tentacles, but he himself was also shaky, and after being taken to a safe place, he lost his strength and fell into a coma. A large marine fleet does not seem to have a general who can complete the task. Lord Gorosei, 5 elders, I mean someone sent by Lord Gorosei, 5 elders. Sengoku said vaguely, but he meant Deadpool, see if they could make a move. No, I asked. When he said this, Kong was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Before, he asked Deadpool to take action, but Deadpool refused without hesitation, and said that Marine was incapable of taking care of them. At that time, looking at Dead Servant's face watching a play, Kong couldn't help but want to do it. Then, I have another way. Sengoku seemed to have made a major decision and continued, send more people down and hide the powerful Vice Admiral inside, as long as the middle person can leave and tell us after confirmation. Just fine. Sengoku and Kong stared at each other with wide-eyed eyes. Sengoku's last resort was undoubtedly to send death squads. The people who went down, except for the Vice Admiral, were all bait to delay other monsters. There's no time. It's pointless to delay the plan even if it succeeds. Sengoku stared at Kong without flinching. If even he, the planner, was shaken at this time, the whole plan wouldn't need to be implemented. I know. Kong threw the cigar on the ground and stomped it out, walking slowly towards the war room. Marshal, call these soldiers and generals in my name. Sengoku felt compelled to pay for his plan. It doesn't have to be. Marshal. I know what to do. As a marshal, of course I will take care of it. Sengoku, you make other preparations for the plan. After saying that, Kong left directly. Soon a group of marine soldiers were called up, whether it was abduction, promise or whatever. Anyway, Kong called these people in front of Sengoku. Among the group of 300 people was a vice admiral who was good at marine rokushiki and observation haki disguised as an ordinary soldier. Chapter 408 Leap. Sengoku looked at the 300 marine soldiers gathered in front of him. His expression was calm, but his heart was mixed. Except for the disguised vice admiral, the rest of these soldiers were just ordinary marine soldiers. Marine soldiers of this strength fell into the sea now under their feet, and it is estimated that they did not even struggle, and there was no hope of survival at all. Just because Sengoku couldn't think of another way or find a more suitable person, these marines will lose their lives abruptly. Sengoku felt like he was an executioner himself, his hands soaked with blood from the 300 marine soldiers in front of him. Sengoku hesitated several times, opening his mouth slightly to tell the 300 marine soldiers the truth, but every time the words got stuck in his throat and couldn't get out. Sengoku didn't know what Marshal Kong said to the 300 marine soldiers. Sengoku was afraid that no one would continue to carry out this mission after he said what he really wanted. Fortunately, Sengoku didn't really tell the details of the 300 marine soldiers. The 300 marine soldiers were kept in the dark except for the disguised vice admiral. As long as you take the information of these marine soldiers and investigate casually, you will find that these marine soldiers have some common characteristics. First, they were innocent. These 300 people were either orphans, or ordinary people without any influence background, and they had never had any contacts with famous people. Second, these 300 people were more or less directed at Marine Marshal Kong's promise. They were told to take part in an extremely dangerous mission, at their own discretion. But every participant Kong offered exciting conditions, such as promotion and making a fortune. Most of these people are not satisfied with the status quo, but their qualifications are mediocre. It's a pity they don't know. Since the war room came out and promised Sengoku, Kong has made up his mind to be responsible for the deaths of these soldiers. CP0 to CP9 under the world government and Tenryubito, but Marine really doesn't have them. In a hurry to create a death squad, Marshal Kong doesn't think he has such charm. Marshal Kong has even considered the name of the report of the guilty plea at that time. For example, Report on the Death of 300 Marine Soldiers. And, miscalculating the dangerousness of the mission, resulting in death, or all okay. In a small conference room on the lower deck of Marine 1, Sengoku was introducing the contents and precautions of the mission to the 300 Marine soldiers. In fact, it is very simple. Confirm the body position and depth of the monster with a large number of tentacles, and then report back alive. There are not many things, and the content of the task is very simple. Sengoku said that he just wants to increase the probability of survival of these 300 people, which may reduce some of Sengoku's inner anxiety. Only Sengoku is responsible for explaining, and the others like Garp, Kong, and Kuzan are still outside fighting those tentacles and deep-sea monsters. The fight begins with the appearance of those ghost ships, with only a brief break after the previous big outburst when Kuzan came back to the rescue. After that, the two sides fought back and forth, with Garp, Kong, Kuzan and the rest of the Vice Admiral battling non-stop outside. Give you 10 minutes of personal time, and gather on the deck in 10 minutes, and the mission will begin. Thinking that if Marine didn't end the mission as soon as possible, more people would die, Sengoku instantly firmed up his heart and threw other thoughts out of his mind. 10 minutes passed quickly, especially when every second counts. 300 Marine soldiers came to the deck of Marine 1, and during the 10 minutes, Sengoku called in another 600 soldiers and had everything ready. 300 soldiers were all assigned waterproof goggles, short-duration submersibles, signal transmitters and receivers, and a 50-meter-long rope. 300 Marines tied ropes, put on all their equipment, and went to the bottom of the sea. As long as they confirmed the position and depth of the monster body, or encountered an irresistible danger, activate the signal transmitter, and the two above will quickly pull it. Come up. Prepare. After preparing for so long, they finally had to jump, and all the Marine soldiers were in high spirits. Kuzan. Sengoku growled. Understood. Ice Age. Kuzan, who had been instructed carefully, naturally knew what to do. A large amount of white and blue energy erupted from Kuzan's body, freezing the sea area under Marine number 1, and it was about 200 meters away from Marine number 1 inch. Pulling up a circle of ice peaks, Kuzan isolated Marine number 1 inch from the tentacles for a while. Akainu, who had just woken up, was also called by Sengoku. Yeah. Akainu responded and waved the great major eruption a few times to dissolve and shatter the ice layer under Marine 1, leaving only the circle of ice peaks. Through the cooperation of Akainu and Kuzan, the monsters on the bottom of the sea were initially cleaned up, and the monsters on the bottom of the sea were temporarily isolated from peeping on the surface of the sea. Right now, jump! Sengoku shouted the order to go at the moment when the Akainu great major eruption shattered the ice. Dong, 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 sounded with the dense sound of falling into the water, and all the 300 Marine soldiers with the mission jumped into the sea. Then the eerie silence lasted for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and the DDD siren sounded like frogs croaking after the rain. After receiving the signal, more than 600 soldiers on the deck quickly pulled up the person in charge. However, none of the soldiers who were responsible for pulling the rope succeeded in pulling the person in charge back. Most of them found that the rope was light when they were half pulled, and only the broken rope was pulled up from the bottom of the sea. The few that were pulled up were mutilated corpses with no survivors. Although Sengoku knew that the mission was dead or alive, 300 Marines were wiped out in less than 6 seconds and nothing was gained. Such a result made Sengoku somewhat unacceptable. A deadly breath descended on everyone on the deck. At the 8th second, like a meteor piercing the silent night, a crisp, "dee-dee" sounded. The moment Sengoku heard it, the form of a big Buddha erupted, and a shaver appeared next to the sounding signal, grabbed the rope in the hands of the two soldiers in charge, and pulled it with all his strength. A figure rushed out from the bottom of the sea and was caught by Garp in midair. All the series of actions happened and completed within a second, and Sengoku used all his strength. The location is 80 meters west, and the depth is 400. Chapter 409 Plot Kill. Marine soldier, who was pulled out of the sea by Sengoku, couldn't wait to report the message in the air as soon as he got out of the sea. His voice was urgent and painful, and at the end he felt a sense of relief. A bad premonition haunted everyone's heart. Garp fell back onto the deck of Marine 1, and the liquid dripped onto the deck. Tick-tock, not just seawater, but red blood. Garp, Suru Vice Admiral did not know when he had returned to Marine 1. Suru Vice Admiral's abilities are not suitable for dealing with behemoths like tentacles, and have been sent as firefighters to Marine's various warships to deal with the undead on those ghost ships. Now that the Suru Vice Admiral has returned, it means that the undead have almost been wiped out. Dead. Garp's voice was extremely cold, and his entire face seemed to be enveloped in black air. Garp Sengoku is no stranger to this. Garp always looks like this whenever his emotions are on the verge of breaking out. Sengoku remembers the last time he saw Garp's expression when Garp was arguing with the Gorosei, 5 elders, and was sentenced to never be promoted. As Garp put the corpse in his hands, everyone in Marine could clearly see the hideous wound covered by Garp. The soldier who reported the message, the entire body on the right rear turned into a pile of rotten flesh. The right waist of the back and the bones seemed to have been bitten by something, and the internal organs had long since disappeared. If the heart was not within the range of being attacked, it is estimated that he would have died without even reporting the information. This can also explain why this person has a relieved tone in his voice after reporting the information. Under such pain, the last Marine soldier already knew that he was not saved, and after reporting the information, he wished to die directly. The entire Marine No. 1 inch was terribly silent, except for the roars of monsters on the side and the sound of tentacles hitting Bingfang. No one spoke. Whether it was Garp, Sengoku, Kuzan, Akainu, or the 600 soldiers who remained on deck and the Suru Vice Admiral who came later, they all had a cold face. Don't be stunned. Are you going to let these soldiers sacrifice in vain? Act quickly, or the monsters will run away when they find out that something is wrong. Marshal Kong, who had never seen a figure, came out of a corner and ordered loudly. Yes, the information exchanged for life cannot be wasted. As the planner, Sengoku was the first to come out of his emotions, and he was responsible for these dead soldiers. The first is to ensure that the sacrifices of these soldiers are worthwhile. Garp, Sengoku, who returned from the form of a Buddha, patted the dark-faced Garp. It's all right, let's get started. Garp, who has always been an optimist, was filled with murderous intent rarely, clasping his fists with both hands, his knuckles were squeezing, snap. Kuzan, Akainu, have you rested enough? Sengoku continued to give the order. No need to go into details, Sengoku had told the two of them about the whole plan before. No problem at all, Akainu and Kuzan replied in rare unison. By the time of Kuzan Akainu's level of generals, he has seen countless blood and grief. Death is not enough to affect their emotions, but tragic sacrifice is always easy to touch people's hearts. Kuzan and Akainu flashed, and the next moment they were over the sea area that the soldier reported. The monstrous white cold air and red magma divided the entire sky into red and white halves, and both fog and darkness were all dispersed. Chin Luo, who was staying in his room and pretending to be dead, also saw this scene from a distance, with a black question mark on his face. Could this be a plot kill? Combination skills. Since ancient times, red and blue have produced CP. Really unparalleled dance. But no matter what, Kuzan and Akainu really went straight. Ice Age. 9 rens of mountains. Kuzan's body turned into a bluish-white streamer, like a cold star rapidly falling to the sea. Wherever he passed, ice crystals formed in the air and fell. As Kuzan fell, a cluster of ice crystals was poked out of the falling sea surface, and a white-blue gas visible to the naked eye swept toward the surrounding sea surface with the ice crystal as the center, and did not stop until 200 meters. The sound of crack, crack, sounded on the edge where the white-blue gas stopped, and ice peaks rose from the ground, but not towards the sky, but the bottom of the sea. In just a few seconds, the 50-meter-thick ice peak continued to extend to the bottom of the sea, and the tentacles of the deep-sea monster, Paul, also froze together. Bing Feng traps the body of the deep-sea monster, Paul, like a prison of ice. These ices are not ordinary ice crystals, but 10,000 years of blue light. Can't break free. If Kuzan became the Ice Emperor, Akainu is the king of fire demons who descended into the world. After Kuzan's action, Akainu was not in a hurry, as if he continued to gather momentum. A fiery red light first appeared on Akainu's body, igniting flames. Then the flames burned the flesh and blood into magma, and the magma expanded further, 5 meters, 10 meters, 20. The last person who appeared in front of everyone was a Balrog king who was close to 200 meters. This Balrog lord has the face of Akainu vaguely, but has no feet. He holds the flames from hell in his hands. Lava is constantly sputtering from his body, and his head is fluttering with flame-like hair. After the body was trapped, as if guessing something, those tentacles rushed back to attack Akainu and Kuzan, trying to stop their next move. Die, bug. Akainu, who became the Fire Demon King, was unafraid to face far more than 50 tentacles. When the hands were waving, countless magma meteors appeared out of thin air, and together with the dancing hands, all the tentacles were blocked. Sengoku handed Garp a football-sized bomb while Kuzan and Akainu got their hands on it. Inside that bomb was an extraction concentrate of the mineral Dyna Rock, the powerful explosive that the Zephyr would steal in the future. However, the liquid in this football is a liquid extract of Dyna Rock, which is far more powerful than the shape bomb that Zephyr stole later, but it is also more unstable. There is only one in the entire marine at present, which is to be used as a research sample. Open the safety valve by 0.1 before throwing, the stuff inside is very unstable. Sengoku ordered. Is it powerful enough to kill that monster? The dark-faced Garp couldn't see the change in his expression. Enough, Sabayati Archipelago is enough to destroy twice this amount. How could Sengoku not understand Garp's meaning? That's good. Garp's voice seemed to float from a distance, and when he got Sengoku's reply, he had already disappeared and appeared 500 meters above the sea surface of the monster's body. Garp's feet are spread, his right hand is swung back, and the bomb with the safety valve opened is in his hand. Lots of black armament hockey condensed on Garp's right hand. While Garp's right arm had tripled in size. Fist bone. Yucatan meteorite. Chapter 410 End of White Light. Fist bone. Yucatan meteorite. The Yucatan meteorite, the legendary giant meteorite that fell on the Yucatan Peninsula and caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, is also a world-annihilating meteorite. Garp called the blow the Yucatan, a sign of the killing intent in his heart. Go to hell, monster. Garp's eyes almost burst into flames of anger, his steel teeth clenched, his brows and lips twisted into a ball. Finally, the momentum and strength on the right hand converged to the apex. The black armor made of armament hockey on Garp's arm is 5 times the size of the original arm. The blue veins that popped up on the black armor looked like a real arm getting bigger. The bomb was also covered with a thick armament hockey, showing the appearance of a beetle nut enlarged to half a meter long. Like an erupting volcano, it erupted suddenly after brewing to the extreme. Garp's attack obviously took a long time to gather momentum, but it seemed so abrupt when he shot. Bomb was thrown by Garp, and the bomb-covering armament hockey turned into a black streamer, breaking the sound barrier at a speed of 17 in an instant. Only a pop, Garp could no longer capture the movement and location of the bomb. As the bomb flew off, the massive reaction force and frictional impact against the air returned to Garp's right arm. The armament hockey armor, which was 5 times the size of the original arm, disintegrated inch by inch, and the clothes on his right hand turned into powder and scattered in the air. This phenomenon continued until Garp's right shoulder stopped. Garp's clothes from his right shoulder to his waist turned to ashes together. The right hand that had recovered from the cause was thicker than his left, and his arm was still glowing with purple light. The strong reaction force even made Garp, who had been falling down, stop his falling body, and there was a slight upward trend. Time freezes, and in the still picture, the bomb is the only moving object. The bomb turned into a black beam of light, breaking through the shackles of space and time, and flew straight toward the target. The black beam of light broke through the fog and passed through the battlefield between the Balrog Lord and the monster tentacles. The obstructing magma was directly knocked away by the black beam of light, and the tentacles that blocked the way were directly cut through a hole. Then the black light beam extended to the sea next to Kuzan's ice crystal. At that moment, the bomb seemed to really turn into a beam of black light and shot directly into the sea, without any splashes on the sea. The black light just shot directly, bringing the bomb to the front of the deep-sea monster, Paul. Garp, who has been throwing cannonballs for half his life, has become very good at throwing things. He can throw it wherever he wants, and it is impossible to overturn on this bomb. It is impossible for a bomb to explode midway. Even the most unstable substance takes a certain amount of time from reaction to explosion. Garp can guarantee that the bomb dropped this time has reached his speed limit. Garp did it, and he made the time between the bomb's release from the hand and the appearance of the target be shorter than the time it took for the explosion to react. The bomb that was about to explode with enormous inertia and speed just appeared on the bottom of the sea. To make the bomb appear intact, Garp covered the bomb with a thick layer of armament hockey, which proved to be effective. Looking at the sudden appearance of the bomb with an uneasy incandescent glow, the deep-sea monster, Paul's orange-yellow eyes revealed unease. Even Aedu, who had empty eyes on the side, formed a stormy sea in those dark eye sockets. White light erupted from the bottom of the sea, rushed out of the sea, and painted the world with white, and everything was annihilated in the white light. From the circular prison in the siege of Kuzan, a beam of light with a radius of 200 meters that filled the entire Bingfeng prison rose from the ground and broke through the sky. In front of the beam of light, the fog and clouds dissipated. The beam of light stretched all the way to the sky, and after nearly 20 seconds, the beam of light slowly disappeared. But before that, the area hundreds of nautical miles above the edge of the beam of light were all assimilated by white light. Heaven and earth lose their color, all things lose their voice. Those who were swallowed by the white light only felt that these 20 seconds were as long as a year. When the whiteness fades, the world will be different. The tentacles that danced all over the sky were gone, but the marine fleet faced another disaster. Although the fluctuations caused by the explosion were mostly blocked by Kuzan's ice peaks, the aftermath of the explosion and the backflow of the sea caused many marine warships to collide together. Deep-sea monster, Paul, launched the last wave of riots before the explosion. As if he knew that he was doomed, he recklessly took a bite on the marine fleet. Garp only remembers being swallowed by the white light and then losing consciousness. When Garp woke up, he found himself lying on the deck of Marine 1, with Kuzan and Akainu, who were also unconscious and still awake. Awake, Sengoku's voice came from behind Garp. It turned out that at the moment of the explosion, Sengoku turned into a giant Buddha and rescued Garp, Kuzan and Akainu from the aftermath of the explosion. Of course this is also part of the plan, one of the aftermath work that was handed over to Sengoku. Hey, that monster is dead. Garp sucked in a breath, and the movement just now touched his right arm. Now Garp's right arm is not only swollen and twice as big, but also covered with purple marks, which is obviously the hole the right arm was broken and severely bruised. I can't find a reason to be fine in this explosion. It should have been turned to ashes. I haven't received any reports of new tentacles appearing so far. This monster can't die unless... Sengoku paused, unable to find any reason, and continued, unless a miracle happens. That's good. Garp, who got the answer, lay back, the obsession in his heart dissipated, and he soon fell asleep again. Before Garp lay down, a morning sun streamed in through the clouds and mist that had been shattered by the beam of light, and sprinkled over the marine fleet. Marine couldn't remember how long it had been since he had sailed into the fog. The mild sunshine brought hope in the ruins of the war, and the battle with the sea monster that lasted for a night finally came to an end. The surviving marine soldiers could not help but sob in a low voice, both the joy of being alive and the sorrow of the dead. But looking at the devastated sea, most of the fleet formed by Marine's strongest assembly order was destroyed. They were not destroyed in the battle with Luyun, but capsized in the strange fog. The Marines can't even find the object of hatred, monster, or this great and perilous route. Kong starts ordering rescues and counting losses. Sengoku and Suru Vice Admiral are busy with the aftermath, and they both plan for the worst. Chapter 411 Statistical Damage. After entering the day, the remaining sea monsters evacuated at Chin Luo's request. Without the cover of darkness, these remnants were no match for Marine. Rather than letting Marine slaughter to vent his anger, it would be better to continue sneaking attacks to block Marine at night. The naturally cunning skeletal demonfish and the kraken with little frontal combat power retreated far away at the moment when the battle was unfavorable. Most of those who did not escape were those who had no brains and were very cruel. Especially the deep-sea monsters. The Marines seemed to hate this kind of creature very much. In the end, only one of the other deep-sea monsters that Chin Luo summoned except Paul escaped, and the others were all besieged and killed by Marine Vice Admiral. The ghost ship didn't save much in the end. As for how long it will take for these so-called undead souls to recover and whether they can recover, Chin Luo doesn't care. In Chin Luo's view, these summoned thugs are all one-time consumables, and they will be worn out when they are worn out. He has no intention of leaving such an army. After this battle, the thugs summoned by Chin Luo died in 7 or 88 ways. It is impossible to repeat such an attack, and they can only carry out small-scale sneak attacks and assassinations. At noon, the surrounding fog filled the void created by the previous battle, and the Marine fleet was once again shrouded in fog. However, before that, Marine successfully completed the rescue of all the wounded and warships, but unfortunately the sun once again left them. The final loss was also counted and handed over to the Marine executives. With a pop, in a conference room of Marine 1, Marine Marshal Kong threw the uploaded report heavily on the table. Everyone in the room had a copy of this report, a single night of casualties and losses for the Marine fleet. No one dared to talk. They all knew the reason for Marshal Kong's anger, but they would not foolishly come forward as a punching bag. Kong's angry eyes swept over the numerous generals present: Zephyr, Sengoku, Garp, Suru Vice Admiral, the recovered Kuzan trio, and a few other generals. Present here is either Vice Admiral, the real power at the top of Marine, or several important officials of the staff. None of these people are very good, except for the Rear Admiral standing on the other side of the long table in the conference room. This Rear Admiral was only instructed to come over to report the situation and deliver the report. Whether it was intentional or not, in the end it was the soft-spoken Rear Admiral who had to endure the thunderous wrath from Marshal Marine. Yes, it's you Rear Admiral, tell me why the casualties of ordinary soldiers and officers are so hit. Didn't I order the ordinary soldiers and officers this morning to just repel those ghost ships and ordinary monsters, those large monsters? It's all up to Vice Admiral. Speaking of this, Marshal Kong was so angry that he slammed his fist on the table again with a bang, and then continued, can these dead people not even hide? Did they think they are too long to die? The loss of warships was not large, most of them were just damaged, and they could continue to be used after repairs. Only 6 warships were actually damaged, including the warship that was destroyed by Aedu. The rest are mostly Air Force ships, that is, the dozen or so ships where the Marine soldiers on the warship were slaughtered the night before. It is easily pulled into the seabed by tentacles without any interference. Of Marine soldiers and middle and low-ranking officers were a little bigger. A quarter, along with the deaths of the previous nights, had killed close to a quarter of the entire Marine fleet on her way home. This result was completely unexpected and unacceptable to Kong. Marshal, I don't know, I'm the one here to hand in the report. Seeing Marshal Kong calling him to explain, Rear Admiral was so frightened that he almost collapsed to the ground. It's the singing, those sirens later changed to a passionate song, there was something wrong with the singing. Seeing Rear Admiral trembling, Suru Vice Admiral sighed and took the initiative to help the innocent Rear Admiral. Suru Vice Admiral's explanation attracted the attention of everyone present, and they all looked over with incomprehension in their eyes. It seemed that Suru Vice Admiral wanted to continue explaining. You think it's just a morale booster? Suru Vice Admiral watched the people beside him nodding and continued. I thought so too at first, but then I thought that these bone scum and stinky fish need morale. This song is sung to Marine soldiers. Many soldiers and ordinary officers were all red-eyed and lost their minds at the back. Quote. Of course, Suru Vice Admiral concealed the fact that the Kraken first used an extravagant voice to mobilize the blood of the Marine soldiers, so that these soldiers were so easy to get on, because this thing is not very glorious to say. These monsters, each of them deserves to die. In addition to anger, Kong's voice added a sense of powerlessness. This time, we have too little information, and the enemy is obviously prepared. This is not a crime of war. A high-level staff member comforted Kong. This old staff and Kong entered Marine at the same time. Others people dare not speak at this time. Hey! A series of sighs emerged from the mouths of unknown numbers of people and echoed in the conference room for a long time. The meeting will continue, and the losses of the Marine fleet are reported one by one. Except for the serious casualties, the other losses are not big. Finally, there is the list of senior generals who died in action. From lieutenant commander to vice admiral, the dead generals are listed. Because of the timely elimination of the deep-sea monster, few of Marine's senior generals were killed in action. There are more than 20 unfortunate people who died in battle. The name of Sato lieutenant commander is also in it. This farce is coming to an end, and it is of little significance to retain the identity of Sato lieutenant commander. Chin Luo has no plans to meet those acquaintances of Sato lieutenant commander. So Chin Luo arranged for Sato lieutenant commander to die in the final counterattack of the deep-sea monster, Paul. No bones left, no proof of death, nothing could be better. Chin Luo was not the only one who had this idea. Kong also put the names of Kuzan and Akainu supporters Faris and Jock, who had been dead for a long time, on the death list. The same cause of death was the death-defying counterattack of the deep-sea monster, Paul. Those who knew the inside story looked at each other and stopped talking. Marshal Kong naturally has his plans, and they won't talk too much. Only 7 Commodore and Rear Admiral died. There is only one Vice Admiral who died, Karo D. Vice Admiral. Karadi Shan, except himself a Vice Admiral. Anyone who has stayed in the Marine for a few years will think of this name, and that is the current Marine Marshal Kong. Sengoku wanted to speak up when he saw the name, but was immediately stopped by Suru Vice Admiral. Chapter 412 Karodi's Tragedy. Sengoku looked like he wanted to ask Kong after seeing the name of Karodi Shan Vice Admiral on the list. Suru Vice Admiral, who was sitting next to Sengoku, saw it so clearly. This is not the right time to say this, especially Sengoku. Suru Vice Admiral, who knows something, sneaks Sengoku with his foot under the table, before Sengoku can speak. Sengoku turned his head and saw Suru Vice Admiral gave him a gesture to say nothing. Although doubtful, Sengoku directly chose to believe Suru Vice Admiral, and it appears that Suru Vice Admiral knew something about Karadi Shan's Vice Admiral. What happened to Karoli Vice Admiral? This person is the confidant of Marshal Kong. How could he have died, and the cause of death is unknown. You must know that Karo D. Shan is not only the Vice Admiral that Marshal Kong trusted most, but also one of the few disciples that Kong accepted when he was young. Especially the unknown cause of death followed by the name, which is even more strange, and Marshal Kong did not mention it at the meeting. Is it the same operation as Faris and Jock? What new plans does Marshal Kong have? Sengoku figured it out in his heart, and the others didn't mention anything based on the principle that more is better than less. The meeting ended in such a strange tacit understanding. Reaching the end of 387, Marshal Kong asked everyone to strengthen the patrols in the next few nights. No matter how wide this fog is, there will always be a time to go out. Moreover, the entire Marine fleet was only 5 days away from the Marine headquarters. Could it be that the fog could continue to spread to the Marine headquarters? Suru, wait. The people who had just finished the meeting walked out of the conference room, and Sengoku ran to Suru Vice Admiral to stop him. Sengoku wants to figure out why Suru Vice Admiral just stopped him from speaking, the smarter the more curious. This is not the place to talk, go to your office. Suru Vice Admiral motioned to Sengoku to take it easy and move to another place suitable for conversation. Garp didn't know what his two friends were talking about, but he had seen this kind of scene a lot, and he was very skilled at dealing with it. He took out a donut, and followed the two of them while eating, not saying anything. Thanks, I just noticed your appearance and stopped you. Karodi-shan, Vice Admiral thing is not in front of Marshal Kong, especially you Sengoku. In Sengoku's office, Sengoku, Suru Vice Admiral and Garp sat opposite each other. Suru Vice Admiral said slowly with a cup of tea in his hand. Ha, Sengoku, what are you doing wrong again? Garp, who has been eating melons all the time, heard Suru Vice Admiral's words. How could he miss the opportunity to ridicule Sengoku? But Garp soon regretted it. After saying this, Garp didn't see Sengoku's angry look, and he also got the two of them. With a look of caring for the mentally retarded, Garp resentfully withdrew the increasingly embarrassed smile on his face, lowered his head and continued to eat senbei, aggrieved like a bullied little daughter-in-law. Ha ha. Well, can I know the reason? Garp's funny nature still softened the atmosphere. Sengoku asked Suru Vice Admiral. The last Marine soldier you pulled up from the sea, the only one who reported the monster's body information, should be Karodi-shan, Vice Admiral. Suru Vice Admiral looked at the teacup in his hand and said leisurely. Sengoku's brows were knitted together, and his expression was very rich, with memories, doubts, and shock. No doubt, you are in a hurry to implement the plan. The Marine soldier's body was taken away by Marshal Kong alone. He looked very decadent at the time. And you didn't notice because you went to implement the plan, but I really did it. Heard Marshal Kong calling the corpse Shan. As Suru Vice Admiral finished speaking, everything became clear. The last Marine soldier who died was Karodi-shan, Vice Admiral. Generally speaking, Karodi-shan and Vice Admiral are called Karodi. Only Marshal Kong, who is his master, will directly use his disciple's surname Shan. Make a name. And it seems that Karodi-shan, Vice Admiral, made a disguise at the time, so that Sengoku and others did not recognize that the sacrificed Marine was him. This would also explain why Marshal Kong didn't bring up the death of Karodi-shan, Vice Admiral, at the meeting, and the unexplained death behind it. There was silence in Sengoku's office, and after learning the facts, the faces of the three of them sank. The three of them were present that day, and that kind of tragic sacrifice was the tragic death of 300 Marine soldiers in less than 10 seconds. The bottom of the ocean in that situation, even Garp would have a hard time escaping. How many unseen monsters are still under the sea, and how many tentacles will be attacked, these are only known by the soldiers who sacrificed. Sengoku stood up alone and left his office. Sengoku. Garp wanted to stop but couldn't say it. Both he and Suru Vice Admiral knew that Sengoku was going to see Kong. The plan was made by me, and the request of the 300 soldiers was also raised by me. I have the responsibility. Sengoku's low voice came from the aisle. He felt that he had to go, even if he was scolded, beaten, and killed. Meet Marshal Kong. Marine 1, the entrance to Marshal Kong's office. Sengoku Admiral. The Marshal said that there is something to be missed today. Two of Kong's personal soldiers stopped Sengoku at the door like a door god. I have something important to call the Marshal, get out of the way. Sengoku wanted to repel these personal soldiers, but it didn't work. Can't do it in front of Kong's office. Marshal Kong had explained to these personal soldiers before, and if Sengoku Admiral came to him, he would not be allowed in. Although the personal soldiers did not know the reason, but since it was the order of Marshal Kong, they would be meticulously executed. Please don't embarrass us, Admiral. The Marshal asked us to tell you that he is in charge of everything, please don't mind. Sengoku, who was so clearly rejected, knew that nothing could be done, and returned to his office in despair. A poison called self-blame spread to his heart. Not that they can ignore life if they are at the top of Marine, it's just that death hasn't come to them, and the pain isn't heavy enough. Think of the future Zephyr. Garp is the case. In Marshal Marine's office, Kong was sitting quietly, staring at the picture of him and Karoldi Vice Admiral in his hand. Tears do not exist for Marshal Marine. But how can there be no grief? The so-called blame, the responsibility lies in his rational words. Kong didn't dare to see Sengoku for fear that he might want to kill him. Memories of the past and Karoldi flooded into his mind. Kong's hands gradually clenched, and cracks appeared in the frame with a pop. Sengoku. Chapter 413 Variety. There was a knock on the door, and after Sengoku had gone for a while, Kong's personal soldiers knocked on the door of Kong's office. "Marshal, it's me," said the janitor softly after knocking for a while without getting a response. Now that Marshal Kong is in a bad mood, his personal soldiers still have some insight, and they don't dare to go in without getting a response from Kong. After waiting for a while, when the soldiers were considering whether to just let it go, the voice of Marshal Kong came out. "What?" Kong's voice was hoarse. The personal soldiers did not dare to neglect and quickly reported the prepared remarks to Kong through the door. "Sengoku Admiral came to visit the Marshal just now, but we stopped him, and we have gone back now." The guards outside Kong's office kept the gesture of bowing and clenching their fists when reporting, without the slightest slack or dissatisfaction. After waiting for a while again, Kong was like dementia, and his response came after a period of time. "Sengoku, I see." Kong's voice was very flat, seemingly without sadness or joy, but also felt that it was carrying too many emotions, the product of various emotions. Kong is not really Alzheimer's, but hearing someone mention Sengoku's name, he has fallen into memory since one time. He remembered the young and full of admiration when Karoldi called him his master when he was a child. He also remembered his memories of coming out of the war room. He promised Sengoku to be responsible for finding the death squad, but he couldn't find a suitable commodore and rear admiral to carry out the mission. He was so tangled that he complained to his disciple Karoldi about it. He'll never forget the way his satisfied disciple comforted him with ease, and finally Karoldi's self-assured disguise on a mission. He stopped it, but was persuaded by Karoldi with the reason that Vice Admiral's strength would be able to get out even if he couldn't complete the mission. At that time, he really couldn't find anyone, and he was worried that if the body of the monster was not solved, the Marine fleet would not be able to bear it, so he was relieved. Karoldi has clearly promised to do what he can. No, Karoldi has always been truthful. He must have felt that he couldn't see clearly, so he dived deeper and determined the position of the monster's body before sounding the signal. It must be like this, otherwise Karoldi's signal doesn't have to wait until the 8th second. Kong thought a lot on this day, and no one bothered the old man who had just lost his disciple. Kong resented Sengoku's plan, resented himself for agreeing to find a death squad, resented his disciple's sincerity, resented the monster and the fog. The end, Kong made a decision, and he overturned his previous decision to resign as Marshal of Marine. Kong's resignation as Marshal of Marine was not a normal retreat in the background or in Mariajoy. There are many supporters behind Kong. These supporters began to gather behind him when he was still an admiral candidate. Various families and forces, even the Tenryubido's and the Gorosei, 5 elders acquiesced. These supporters helped him become an admiral, a marine marshal. Now these Kong supporters promise that as soon as Kong resigns as Marshal Marine, he will be the commander-in-chief of the world government. Originally Kong had already arranged everything. He would get a higher position, Marine would usher in a new marshal, and his disciple Karoldi would get an important seat in the top ranks of Marine and take over what he left in Marine. Resources and contacts. In the original plan, Karoldi would become an important person in Kong's remote control and supervision of Marine after Kong became the commander-in-chief of the world government. Kong and others took full control of Marine with the help of the world government, and for so long, they turned Marine into an iron barrel. This kind of power doesn't mean to give up when it says to give up. He can resign as Marshal of Marine, but his voice must remain in Marine. It's all over because Karoldi is dead, dead worthless. In spite of the resentment, Kong's selfish desires are soaring like never before, and he has several disciples, although Karoldi is the best. Kong will never resign as Marshal of Marine until he cultivates a new spokesperson, and he believes that those supporters behind him will understand what he means. Many in the Marine fleet lost sleep that night. These Marines are not sleepless, they are actually very tired and want to rest, but fear has invaded their hearts. After several nights of monster attacks and deaths, they dared not fall asleep, fearing that it would be forever. The Kraken and the Bone Demon Fish came as promised. Only these two creatures were preserved in relatively large numbers. There were only 3 or 2 kittens left in other monsters and ghost ships. The Bone Demon Fish can set off a limited amount of wind and waves, and the strength of this creature itself is not very good, and it all depends on the number and assassination ability. The current Marine Patrol force is extremely strong, and 3 people, Kizaru, Kuzan, and Akainu, are on duty in turn. Without Chin Luo's participation, they were quickly arrested. The assassination of the skeletal devil fish was ineffective, and the cunning and timid creatures withdrew immediately. Before Marine was not surrounded, they resolutely abandoned their companions who could not escape and left. 0. That night, the well-preserved skeletal demon fish group left nearly 1/3 of the corpses on the Marine fleet, most of which were frozen into ice sculptures by Kuzan, and fewer than 100 Marine soldiers were successfully assassinated. On the contrary, the sea monster, who has always been invisible, used a song with hallucinatory effect to cause the Marine soldiers to kill each other, causing a lot of murder. Damn these sirens, damn them all. Send me orders to the Marines and bounty hunters all over the world for this race, and I'll make them all. At the regular meeting the next day, Kong roared at all the Marine generals, not only cursing the Kraken, but also some Marine generals were also angrily reprimanded by Marshal Kong for being incompetent. Many people think that Marshal Kong seems to be a little different, but it is not clear what it is, at least he is more irritable than before. Considering that Marshal Kong had just lost his apprentice, these people put the discovery behind them. After all, it is normal for people to become a little irritable in the face of deep sorrow. Even Marshal Kong, like the Iron Man, is not immune. It is estimated that in addition to Kong himself, only 3 people can understand Kong's abnormality. Chin Luo, who has been hiding and secretly observing the top of Marine, and the 2 dead servants who come and go freely. Knows the situation, but they only report it to the Gorosei, 5 elders. They don't even care about Marine's life or death. And Chin Luo, he was thinking about how to make the fire burn more vigorously. Chapter 414 Code Takeaway. At the back of the Marine fleet were several empty warships. These are a few of the 11 warships whose entire crews disappeared a few days ago that are still alive. No one was stationed on these warships, and most of them were dragged into the sea by deep-sea monsters in the pre-dawn battle yesterday. Seeing that these warships were intact, Sengoku arranged them at the back of the Marine fleet. Chained with a steel cable, let the warship in front drag it away, and don't worry about falling behind suddenly. So these warships don't even have a crew or helmsman, and the only visitors are Marine, who patrols at regular times every day. In particular, there have been continuous assassinations at night, and after a major battle, Marine soldiers have been seriously injured. At this time, those who are willing to come to these Air Force ships to garrison, except for the Long Life, only the Long Life. As a result, Chin Luo, who lost his identity as Sato Lieutenant Commander, stayed on one of the warships so happily. As for those patrolling Marines, a wheel-eye illusion used to not make these patrolling clear. Chin Luo couldn't see the disc dance beside them. Commodore who was killed by him. No way, whoever made the highest rank among these warships is the Commodore. No matter what, Commodore's room is stronger than that of an officer-level general in terms of size and decoration style. Don't look at the previous, Sato Lieutenant Commander, as also the Supreme Commander on that warship, but his room is also a small study with a bed and a table. Chin Luo never wronged himself when he could choose. Chin Luo didn't have much resistance to living in the room of the person he killed. Strictly speaking, Chin Luo was indeed a heartless person. Seriously, it's the death of Hey Commodore. Chin Luo first ate his snacks, killed his people, took his saber, stabbed the people he liked, and finally occupied his bed. For the dead Hey Commodore, it was 5 blessings. Like people, Chin Luo seems to have grasped something key, but he can't remember it. After thinking about it for a long time but not getting what he wanted, Chin Luo's eyes began to wander around the room. From the bed to the bookshelf, and finally to the desk in front of him. On the desk is the standard marine desk, quills, documents, and photo frames. In the photo frame is a group photo of a group of people. In the photo, apart from the dead Hey Commodore and some of the generals who were cut down by him, Chin Luo only knew the female Captain Feely. If he found it, how could he forget the female captain? This is a key role. Chin Luo stretched out his hand and buckled the photo frame, probably thinking of something interesting. His eyes radiated agile light. Now that he remembered Feely, the female captain, Chin Luo planned to make a good plan. Who would have thought that a casual chess game that was randomly laid out at the beginning has now become a key entry point for Chin Luo's future plans? At lunchtime, the sun went down quickly. In the fog with insufficient light, after the sun went down, it was officially announced that darkness once again dominated this sea area. In the medical room of Marshal Kong's car, Marine No. 1 inch, there are several small rooms specially provided for high-level training. Philly Captain, the Marine female officer, was placed in one of the rooms after waking up. The female Captain's military rank is definitely not a high-level Marine, and the reason why she was placed in it was that surveillance, house arrest, and protection meant far more than anything else. Marine soldiers and generals have suffered a lot of casualties these days, and all the medical staff have gone out to take care of the patients. In the entire Marine No. 1 medical room, there is no one else except Captain Feely and the 2 Marines standing at the door of her room. Dong dong dong, there were continuous knocks on the door of Feely's female captain's room. Not many people came to her at this time, and Captain Feely wondered who the person was. "Sir, it's me who delivered the meal. I'm here to deliver the dinner as requested, please open the door." Through the frosted glass, the visitor raised the food box in his hand. "Really, I happen to be very hungry too. What's the dish tonight?" Feely female captain smiled at the approaching person, and her tone was a little playful when she said it. It sounded like a greedy girl acting like a spoiled child same. The real situation is that when Captain Feely heard someone asking her to gate of opening, she knew that the person at the door pretending to deliver food was not the usual little soldier, and the visitor was not good. Captain Feely she directly found the transmitter that Kong and others left her and pressed it. "Curry potato and octopus, tonight's main course, I think you will like it." Outside the female captain's room, Chin Luo stood silently. At this time, Chin Luo continued his lieutenant commander costume, but put on a white clown mask on his face. Chin Luo was not worried that the female captain would recognize him, but it would not be very good to see his face. Even across a door, Chin Luo knew that the female captain inside had found out that something was wrong with him and sent out a distress signal. And now the female captain is also procrastinating, waiting for the top Marine who received the news to complete the encirclement. But it doesn't matter, Chin Luo's purpose at the beginning was to make noises, and the behavior of the female captain was just to help him attract more Marine's attention. For this reason, Chin Luo also gave an interesting name to the first stage of his plan, code-named, Takeaway. Feeling that it was almost time to wait, Chin Luo Vivi Isho twisted the door lock with his hand. In just an instant, the door lock was reimbursed. "Miss Feely, your takeaway has arrived." Chin Luo's cold voice was under the white clown mask. It's you, that night." The female captain saw Chin Luo who came in with ease at the gate of opening, the familiar lieutenant commander clothes, standard long knife and figure, no doubt pinned her through the wall that night. People. Fear, A huge fear lingered in the female captain's heart. Did the other party couldn't help but want to kill him. For the first time, the female captain frantically complained about the weakness of the two Marines in front of her. Apart from the pretense, these two Marines may not even be able to beat her as a woman. Now encountering a more fierce existence, the two wastes were cleaned up without even a little alarm and abnormal sound. It's not good for you to know too much. Chin Luo gently placed the food box on the ground, took out the standard long knife around his waist, and aimed the tip of the knife at the female captain. With a flash of white practice, Chin Luo's standard long knife slashed towards the female captain's neck. The female captain gave up resistance as if she was frightened. As long as the knife hits, it doesn't take much effort, and death will come soon. Go away. One red and one blue light suddenly shattered the wall behind the female captain and hit Chin Luo. Chapter 415 Golden Cicada Shells. A piece of solid ice slanted out from the female captain's right rear, forming a barrier to block the female captain's face. The invisible sword she cut out by Chin Luo fell on the barrier formed by the solid ice, blasting the sky full of ice chips. Captain under the protection of the ice was safe and sound, and Chin Luo's attack did not touch her. Chin Luo, who has a full-level physical body, can slash at random with extreme power. Even if the ice blocks a sword, even if the mission is completed, the cracked ice barrier has no power to stop the long knife in Chin Luo's hand. But taking advantage of the time blocked by the ice, the red light also came to Chin Luo. After approaching, the red light became real, and it turned out to be the hot and steaming magma. This group of fist-like magma ignored it and directly faced the long knife that was hit by the slash. The person who came seemed to have decided that Chin Luo was holding a marine-style long knife. He didn't add any substances that could restrain those with devil fruit power, such as sea stone, nor did it attach armament hockey, so he didn't worry about getting hurt at all. Whether it should be said that it is a narrow road meeting, the rogue wins. When the slash met the magma, Chin Luo's slash first cut the magma into two sections. But this time it was indifferent to the magma, and it didn't even feel the pain of mosquito bites. In the next second, the magma that was cut into two pieces was fused together again, and the long knife that came out of the middle of the two pieces of magma was wrapped with it. This ordinary marine-style long knife was just enough to withstand Chin Luo's swing. Now that it was swallowed by the magma, the blade dissolved in less than a second. The magma was castrated unabated, and it called towards Chin Luo's chest. For the first time, Chin Luo was annoyed that he did not master hockey. In front of so many Marines, Chin Luo didn't want to reveal some abilities that only Lu Yun or Chin Luo had. Did he just tell others that you were making a fool of yourself? Therefore, without using special abilities, Chin Luo has absolutely nothing to do with this rogue. Throwing away the marine-style long knife with only the handle left in his hand, Chin Luo took a step back to avoid the nearby magma. The three people who had just fought each other for a round withdrew, and the red and blue rays of light also became human. Nt Kuzan and Akainu, the familiar ice and magma, and the same way of attacking for thousands of years. You said that although Kuzan and Akainu are very different in character, they are basically the same regardless of the number of attacks. A great major eruption, or great major eruption, boring. Other as Ice Age, and then Ice Age, no idea. If you hear different moves from the mouths of these two people, it must be a bigger move. This is no one anymore. Kuzan, Akainu, why are you here? A mechanically cold voice came out of Chin Luo's mouth, with a hint of doubt. This doubt was not all fake, although Chin Luo knew that he was bringing Marine over. But I never thought that it would be Kuzan and Akainu. Also, how does Chin Luo feel that the three future Marine Admiral of Kuzan, Akainu and Kizaru are a little bit shifted towards the direction of the Rockets trio? The tricycle of the trio always took the initiative to hit Chin Luo, the Apocalypse tank, head-on. No matter when he appeared as Chin Luo or Lu Yun, this tricycle with a suicide attack always smashed itself into pieces, or it was the kind that has been defeated and fought repeatedly. In short, in a word, the head is not good. Hey, since Marine San Xiaoqiang is mentioned, both Akainu and Kuzan are here. It makes no sense that Kizaru, who is the fastest, will not be there. Qin Luo thought of such a thought, a string in his heart moved, and suddenly there was something on his head. Feel. Suddenly, Qin Luo became short and withdrew a few meters to the right rear. At the same time, a yellow light flashed, attacking Qin Luo's position just now, causing a lot of smoke. If Qin Luo hadn't left early, he would have hit Qin Luo's head to his back firmly from behind. Smoke. Kizaru's body was slowly revealed, and a yellow light was condensed on his feet. Kuzan, Akainu, it must be the two of you who have shown your flaws, otherwise how could my sneak attack with the speed of light kick fail this time? Kizaru's voice was filled with embarrassment that the sneak attack failed. How awesome is this trick of bragging about, sounding the east and hitting the west, one hit kills, and never misses. If Qin Luo knew about it, he would definitely sigh that the sound is so coincidental. You are using sound to hit the west, and so do I. I didn't do anything, you ask Akainu. Kuzan ignored Kizaru's villain's first complaint and didn't refute him, but kicked the ball to Akainu. Kizaru, don't slap your face, you're too embarrassed to blame others, everyone who can cooperate has cooperated, who can blame yourself? The hot-tempered Akainu broke out on the spot. You. Kizaru glared at Akainu, and was interrupted by Kuzan when he was about to retort. Stop bickering, the guests are going to run away, are you in charge? Kuzan said, as he summoned a large number of ice crystals in his right hand, and attacked the figure wearing a white clown mask and lieutenant commander clothes that was running out. Humph. Kizaru hummed lightly, and turned into a streamer to intercept Qin Luo. Akainu, knowing that he can't keep up, hangs behind him with, shaved. Qin Luo saw that Kizaru was going to quarrel with Akainu before, so naturally he would not like the villain in the movie to stay still and let them finish the conversation. Now that he has attracted Marine's attention, Qin Luo plans to withdraw, and the second step of the plan is about to begin. Wait a minute, I don't know which General 380 you are, can you take off the mask and take a look? Kuzan chased Qin Luo 2 meters behind him, and he was very casual as he stepped on the ice skateboard. Qin Luo was only running with the full strength of his body, and he didn't even have the skills to shave Marine Rokushiki, so he couldn't pull Kuzan and Kizaru apart in terms of speed. Kizaru, the fastest, was always relentless and tried to stop Qin Luo with a left punch and a right leg, but Qin Luo swayed or caught him casually. Soon, Qin Luo arrived at the left deck of Marine 1. If it wasn't for the fact that Kuzan and Akainu came out through the wall on the right deck, Qin Luo also planned to leave directly on the right deck. Catch him. Glancing at the voice, Sengoku, Garp, and other Vice Admiral were basically attracted by him. Fortunately, he didn't care about the quarrel between Akainu and Kizaru. If it was delayed, it would be a little troublesome. No need to send far, goodbye. After Qin Luo finished speaking, he jumped out of the sea, turned around and threw 5 black balls in the direction of Marine, and threw another one beside him. The speed at which the black ball was thrown was not fast, and the black ball thrown at Marine was directly chopped by Marine. The black ball is not an explosive, and emits a lot of black smoke as soon as it hits something. 6 thick black smoke came out, and with the sound of falling into the sea, Qin Luo's figure disappeared. Chapter 416 Right among you. In the fog with low visibility, the effect of black fog blocking the line of sight is even better. Marine, who has been baptized by a series of monster attacks, is like a bird in shock, afraid of poison in the black smoke. At first, I didn't dare to breathe in the black smoke, and I was in a hurry. The black smoke dissipated, and Qin Luo's shadow could still be found. Where are the people? Why are they gone? This was the first reaction of most generals when they couldn't find the attacker. The generals walked to the position where Qin Luo had just disappeared, stuck their heads out and looked at the sea outside, but nothing gained. I just wanted to hear the sound of falling into the sea. Some people in the panicked crowd had excellent hearing and noticed the sound of falling water mixed with the sound of the waves. A vice admiral thought for a while and said loudly, "Hey, I heard it too, I thought I heard it wrong." After the vice admiral proposed it, some generals continued to express their support. The vice admiral didn't say that the attacker might have fallen into the sea and ran away, but many generals thought so involuntarily. The first to put the idea into practice was Kuzan. When the attacker disappeared, Kuzan was the closest, and he naturally heard the sound of falling water. Glacier time. Kuzan stretched out his hand towards the sea below, intending to freeze the seawater in the entire area and catch the turtle in the urn for the attacker. However, the blue light just condensed into an icicle half a meter wide and 10 meters long in Kuzan's hand, and it was stopped by Sengoku before it touched the sea. Reason. Naturally, Kuzan wouldn't doubt that something was wrong with Sengoku. There must be some reason for Sengoku Admiral to stop him. Kuzan obeyed Sengoku's arrangement, but he also wanted to know the reason, and the surrounding vice admiral and rear admiral who heard the news were equally puzzled. It's too late to freeze the sea now, the attackers have already run away, and I have a hunch that the attackers didn't fall into the sea. Sengoku, who has always been known as the resourceful general among Marine, said his own after thinking about it. The other generals did not speak out against Sengoku, whether they understood what Sengoku meant or not. Garp, go to the opposite warship and ask if any Marine soldiers actually saw someone fall into the sea. I want real information, not a simulated answer. Sengoku ignored the reactions of the other generals and started directly. Give instructions. It's too troublesome to explain to these people, and he might as well use it to catch the attackers with his kung fu. Garp took the order, used a few shaves and moon step together, and flew to the opposite warship. The opposite warship and Marine 1 is not very close, and it is completely impossible for a person to fly from Marine 1 to the opposite warship silently. And the other Marine soldiers who were not blocked by the black smoke were not blind. It was impossible for no one to see so many soldiers on the two warships. As a result, the possibility of the attackers rushing to the opposite warship was the first one that was silently rejected by many generals in their hearts. Soldier, you go and notify the warships, pay attention to the people who come out of the sea and are wet during this time. No matter what rank, once you find them, they will take them and wait for interrogation. Sengoku pointed to the Marine soldiers on the edge of the crowd and issued new instructions. Sengoku did everything flawlessly. Although he had a hunch that the attacker did not escape by falling into the sea, he was still ready to block the attacker's escape route. Many Marines secretly said, "Seconds, Sengoku's method is much more effective and convenient than Kuzan's behavior of freezing the entire sea." Time everything was done, Garp had almost asked. When he came back, Garp was still carrying two Marine soldiers. "What are you doing?" Sengoku was a little speechless and asked Garp to ask, but he was better and brought back two Marine soldiers directly. How could Sengoku, who knew Garp as a man, couldn't imagine what Garp was planning? "You two, repeat what you just said." Garp is too lazy to use his brain, and secondly, to prevent problems or omissions in his statement. Whenever this happens, he will arrest the witnesses as evidence. The generals looked at the two soldiers that Garp had captured, but wanted to see what medicines were sold in the gourds of Garp and Sengoku. By so many Marine generals, the two soldiers were a little nervous and couldn't help but stutter. Marine soldier on the left was the first to speak. The movement of Marine number 1 was a bit loud just now. Many soldiers on the warship were looking in the direction of Marine number 1. Garp Vice Admiral asked me if I saw the attacker fall to the bottom of the sea. Not only many of my soldiers saw a shadow flash past, and then a splash of water appeared on the sea. It means that the attacker escaped after falling into the sea. A rear admiral shouted out. It seemed to be an unconfirmed statement, but his tone was very certain. Basically, he wanted to publicly beat Sengoku, who claimed that the attacker did not fall into the sea. Face. What's the hurry? Continue talking. Garp glanced at the same rear admiral, who was really going to show off his presence recently. After speaking, he pointed to another soldier. I see the same thing, but I'm a little confused. Garp paused, sorted out his thoughts, and saw that everyone was looking at him, he quickly continued. There is something wrong with that splash. I usually play diving. That splash is too small and too short. It doesn't look like it was caused by someone falling into the sea. And that figure is very vague, I suspect. Marine soldier did not dare to continue to say what he suspected. He could not bear the responsibility. But the generals present are all sensible people, and they don't know what they are suspecting. Since the attacker didn't fall into the sea and didn't run to other warships, where would the attacker be? Sengoku smiled and looked at the many marine generals with a playful smile in his voice. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. I suspect that the attacker played a game of blacklight. He is still on Marine 1, and he may even be among us. Sengoku carefully observed the reactions of the crowd, unfortunately not much. What does Shanshi Admiral mean? Is he suspicious of us and intends to imprison us? As these words fell, everyone became restless, and the scene became uncontrollable. Sengoku is right, the attacker is still on this ship. A loud voice sounded, and the late future Marshal Kong appeared, followed by 2 dead servants. Are you sure? Before coming, Kong went to 2 dead pools. There is no spatial fluctuation, and no one falls into the sea. This was Deadpool's answer. Kong came directly here after receiving Deadpool, but he received bad news halfway through. The corpse at Marine 1 was destroyed, where the bodies of Faros and Jock were kept. Chapter 417 Interlocking. Time went back to the moment when Chin Luo jumped out of the deck. According to the plan, Chin Luo threw out the prepared smoke bombs. 1 exploded on the spot, and the other 5 were thrown at 5 different places. Marine generals who were chasing were relatively concentrated, and there were fewer places that needed to be covered with black smoke. There were even many smoke bombs like black balls prepared. So it didn't matter that 2 smoke bombs were thrown into a place where no one was at random, it was just a cover. After the first 2 and the smoke bombs around Chin Luo exploded, he used a very short time to wrap the marine cloak on his body and the scabbard of the standard long knife and hurriedly threw it into the sea, making the appearance of falling into the water. Chin Luo himself used the simplest ninjutsu phantom technique copied from the Shaker's Eye, turned it into a black ball and hid it among the last 3 thrown, and came to a corner covered by shadows. Then Chin Luo exploded the last smoke bomb in his hand, and his plan to escape from the shell was completed. It's just a very simple use of illusion, and other energy can be used instead of chakra. Just because Marine doesn't understand ninjutsu, it can also play the role of hiding the sky and crossing the sea. After finishing everything, Chin Luo quickly drove away from 107 before Sengoku and the others could react. Halfway through, he dealt with a single Marine soldier, put on the clothes of an ordinary Marine soldier, and went directly to the corpse of Marine No. 1. Because the battle with Kuzan Akainu just now is not small, it happened again on the flagship Marine 1. Along the way, Chin Luo encounters Marine who is unclear about the situation and then rushes to the location of the incident. At this time, the entire Marine No. 1 became restless, and many people walked in a hurry, and no one noticed Chin Luo's disguised Marine soldier. What's more, the corpse is not a secret place, and there are no guards outside. Even because of Jock and Faros, Kong sent at most 2 people to guard the innermost room of the corpse where the 2 bodies were kept. Chin Luo quickly resolved the personnel on duty in the corpse, and then looked at the innermost room, where the bodies of Jock and Faros were placed, as well as the guards in the last 2 corpses. The 2 guards inside the door seemed to be a pair of brothers, and Marshal Kong asked them to keep an eye on the 2 corpses without being noticed by others, so they chose to guard inside the door. Chin Luo came to the door of the room and could vaguely hear the voice inside the door. Brother, there's a lot of noise outside, did something happen? Never mind that, watch carefully. It's really unfortunate that I was sent by the marshal to guard the corpse. It seems that the 2 brothers have different personalities. After getting no other useful information, Chin Luo pushed the door and went in directly. Who are you? The out-of-character brother was startled by Chin Luo, who suddenly pushed in the door and asked angrily. His brother looked at Chin Luo with a bad look on his face. Shish. I was sent by the marshal. Chin Luo lowered his voice, made a small gesture, and continued playfully, take your lives. Before Chin Luo finished speaking, he had already shot, and 2 palm knives on the left and right were cut on the necks of the brothers. It doesn't matter whether the brothers are listening to his explanation or guarding against him. Chin Luo's shot was to pay attention to the words, fast and accurate, and the spines at the necks of the 2 brothers were directly broken into pieces. The 2 brothers couldn't make any other sound, and they quickly fell to the ground and took their last breath. Buy-in. He clapped his hands, as if he had done something trivial. Chin Luo ignored the brothers after using 2 palm knives and opened his eyes to look for the bodies of Jock and Faris. I found it, these 2. Chin Luo said silently in his heart, and quickly locked the target. There are more than 10 cold storages in 3 rows in the room. Chin Luo opened the 2 in the middle, which was one of the real goals of his trip, the corpses of Jock and Faris. The assassination of the female captain was just to attract attention and to call in more marine generals. After the destruction of the bodies of Jock and Faris as the master of the plan, the cause of death of the 2 is announced in a different direction. These steps are intertwined, and finally the suspicion between marine can be deepened. The fake Luyun corpse was not placed in the corpse, but was placed as a trophy without knowing where it was placed. Marine obviously had bad intentions for this corpse and planned to use it to make some articles. Chin Luo would be willing to deal with it if he saw it. However, since it was hidden, Chin Luo didn't intend to make any extras. Anyway, the living Luyun would soon appear in front of Marine again, and then it would just be a corpse with illusion. Repulsion storm. Facing the 2 corpses, an invisible storm-like repulsion swept over. Pulled violently, the 2 corpses turned into 2 piles of flesh and blood, and then splashed against the wall of the room. On the edge of Marine No. 1 Marshal's office, a Marine ensign was about to watch the fun, but a Marine soldier ran out of the corner and stumbled into him, and then fell to the ground. Ensign looked at the fallen soldier, who just looked up. Isn't this soldier Chin Luo who left the corpse? The eyes of the 2 met in the air, and the light of the kaleidoscope in Chin Luo's eyes flashed, and Ensign fell into the illusion. In Ensign's eyes, the soldier had a deep wound on his chest, bleeding profusely. The soldier spat out blood and said to him, "There's an accident in the corpse, go find the marshal." After saying that, the soldier fell to the ground and died. As usual, Ensign would not dare to care about such a thing, nor would he dare to see the marshal, let alone where the marshal was. But this time Ensign felt that something in his heart had been urging him to see the marshal, and there was a hunch that the marshal was in front of him. Maybe it was because someone died in front of him just now. Although Ensign felt strange, he went to the marshal. Ensign left, the dead soldier stood up, where there were wounds and blood. Chin Luo patted his clothes and left with a sneer. He was going to go to Sengoku to watch a play. Kong was on his way to the medical room, when suddenly someone from behind shouted at the marshal and ran towards him. He turned his head and saw a flustered ensign, but couldn't remember who it was. "Marshal, there is an accident in the corpse." Ensign didn't expect to meet the marshal. As soon as he ran to Kong, he explained the dead marine soldiers. "What happened? What happened to the corpse? Can you be more specific?" Kong had a bad premonition. But Ensign knew so much, so he described the experience just now to Kong completely. Kong narrowed his eyes and thought for a while, then instructed a soldier, "You, follow this ensign to find the dead marine soldier. For the rest, go to the corpse with me first." Chapter 418 Brain-Filling Drama. As soon as Kong got to the door of the corpse, he could smell the bloody smell coming from the hidden door, and there was also a rotten smell that had deteriorated and expired. There was not a single living hole in the corpse, including the staff and guards, all died of broken neck bones, and of course no blood was seen. The peculiar smell of blood came from the innermost room, the one with the bodies of Jock and Faros. Without looking, Kong knew that the bodies of Jock and Faros had been destroyed. "Marshal." A soldier ran in. It was the personal soldier who had been sent by Kong to join Ensign to find the dead marine soldiers. "Didn't find it. Kong asked without turning his head to the personal soldier. Then the personal soldiers looked at Kong, who was a little surprised by the marshal's unserved profit, and then said, "Yes, according to Ensign, we will go to the dead Marine soldier, but we can't find the body or even the blood that Ensign said. Didn't see it." "Understood, let's go." Kong's performance gave the personal soldiers the appearance that the marshal had known for a long time, and the information reported by the personal soldiers seemed very bland. "Marshal. Anything else?" Kong glanced back at his own soldiers this time. The personal soldiers suppressed the surprise in their hearts and continued to report. "The ensign showed signs of going mad after he couldn't find the Marine soldier," he said, "and we have already controlled it. What should my subordinates do next?" "Interrogation of that ensign." "There's no need for an interrogation. This ensign is probably just a randomly selected prop. It must be some kind of hypnosis. Ask him the scene where he met the Marine soldier and what the soldier looked like, and see if he can find any spider silk horses. Trace." Kong waved his hand to signal for his personal soldiers to leave, but immediately stopped the personal soldiers. "You place the ensign, bring someone over to control the corpse, search carefully, and don't let me give you any orders. Others come in." The end. Kong confirmed that Karo D-Shan's body was okay and left with 2 Deadpools. He wanted to turn with Sengoku as soon as possible. He had a hunch that the attackers had not left Marine 1. At this point Sengoku had just confirmed that the attacker did not fall into the sea, but was probably hiding among the crowd. When many Marine generals were in an uproar, Kong just arrived, and loudly announced behind the crowd, "Sengoku is right, the attacker is still on this ship." Marine generals who were noisy at the beginning saw that Marshal Kong was coming, and they all shut up and stopped talking. The crowd automatically made way for Kong and the 2 dead servants to walk to Sengoku and others. "The attackers got in from the outside fleet and I blocked the way out of Marine 1 as soon as I got the news. No one left the ship at this time except a few messengers. So the attackers were still on the ship. And if he wants to leave, he will silently return to you. There is no way for a strange face to hide on Marine 1. Kong said decisively to the many generals, and changed his direction to announce that all the generals were suspect. Not only Kong, but Sengoku felt it. This time the Marine generals came too early. Although Kong gave a notice to ask Vice Admiral to come to help capture the attackers, what happened to these Vice Admirals who arrived after the messenger just left, and those Rear Admirals who came uninvited? Kong looked at the blackness of Rear Admiral and Vice Admiral below, a little speechless, as if these people had been notified in advance. Yes, with advance notice. A thought flashed through Kong's mind, and he figured it out in an instant. What's wrong? Sengoku noticed that Marshal Kong's expression changed slightly, as if he was thinking of something bad. Just now on my way here, did something happen to the corpse? There's something wrong with the corpse, maybe it's the 2 corpses. Sengoku also knew that he and others had been tricked by the attacker, and the target of the attacker was the 2 corpses from the beginning. The assassination of the female captain is just a pretense. If you can kill it, you can do it easily. If you can't kill it, it doesn't matter. As long as it can cause a commotion, you can call many generals to Marine Number 1. You must know that although the corpse is not a heavily guarded place, there are many other departments and Marines on the side. It is too difficult to get rid of the corpse without making any noise. As long as a little movement is made, the entire Marine Number 1 Marine will be besieged, and then it will not be able to escape. But it was different just now. Because of the attack and escape drama directed and performed by the attackers, the entire Marine 1 was in turmoil. In the commotion, even any movement from the corpse was concealed in the commotion and noise of the crowd. In the end, he sneaked back into the many generals and left Marine 1 and pretended not to know anything. Okay, the attacker really did a good job of calculus, and what clues were hidden on the 2 corpses that made the attacker desperately want to destroy it? Sengoku cursed in his heart. Damn, there is an irritability of being intellectually suppressed. To be said that the content and plans of Sengoku Brain Supplement are very achievable. If it wasn't for Chin Luo's ability to move around by water, Chin Luo would have believed it himself. Faced with the enigmatic questions and answers between Kong and Sengoku, the marine generals present were all those with extremely strong hearing who could hear them clearly, but they couldn't understand the meaning at all. Sengoku Admiral, what happened to the corpse? If there is an accident in the corpse, does it mean that the attacker is not among us, and we have not left since we came? A rear admiral in the crowd asked. His tone there is also a sense of helplessness in it, and if I don't know, I really think that the name rear admiral is unintentional. Yeah, and what happened to the two corpses? I wonder if the marshal and admiral hid something and didn't tell us. When no one thought of it, Kizaru, who had been silent and had no sense of existence, stood up. Come out and take the words of the rear admiral. Judging from Kizaru's appearance, it doesn't seem like he doesn't know about Jock and Faris, or who he got the news from, and rear admiral just now. It seems that the relationship with Kizaru is not that simple. As long as you're not stupid, you know there's something in Kizaru's words. Sengoku knew that if the matter was not made clear today, these marine generals would not cooperate with the subsequent search. I just don't know if these were also arranged by the attackers, and whether Kizaru and the attackers knew each other. Sengoku's face was so black that it made Kizaru feel a little nervous. In fact, Kizaru just wanted to take the opportunity to announce that Jock and Faros died on Kuzana Kainu's ability, and to add some block to Kuzana Kainu who had been pressing him, and had no other idea. Chapter 419 Time is limited. If Kizaru knew that Sengoku had connected him to the attacker, Kizaru would probably have wanted to die. Heaven and earth conscience. Kizaru really just wanted to smear Kuzana Kainu. By the way, there is only such a small request. Fortunately, Sengoku just had such suspicions, and it was not certain that Kizaru and the attacker were really hooked up. At least Kizaru must not be the attacker. Just now, Kizaru and the attackers had a fight here, and it seemed to Sengoku that Kizaru didn't release water. There's one more reason why it might hurt a bit to say it. Sengoku feels that Kizaru does have a motive to cooperate with the attacker, just like he is trying to discredit Kuzana Kainu now. But there is a difference. This series of attacks and assassinations, whether it is the assassination of senior generals, or the joint sea monster slaughtering marine, is not a small crime. Once found to be in a state of immortality with the entire marine, Sengoku thinks Kizaru doesn't have the guts to get involved in these things. No matter what Sengoku thinks, Kizaru's words have already made it clear that there is something tricky in the corpse, that Sengoku Admiral and Marshal Kong are hiding something from Marine, and it's about the attackers. If it was before, these Marine generals didn't care whether they caught the attacker or not, and the attacker's information, they only worried about their own safety and whether they would become the attacker's next victim. But things are different now. They are regarded as criminal suspects. If some things are not explained clearly, I am afraid that they will not be able to do good. In this case, Sengoku can only scratch his head helplessly. The forbidden password is issued by Marshal Kong, and it can only be broken by Marshal Kong. Sengoku didn't dare to make his own decisions. He came all the way to Marine Admiral, not only in strength, wisdom and merit, but also in his political literacy. Sengoku was silent. He was waiting for Marshal Kong to speak. General Marine and Kong. Sengoku, just look at me and I look at you, like a turtle to a bastard. The end. Marshal Kong took the initiative to announce to many Marine generals relevant information about the deaths of Jock and Faris, which he planned to hide. Since he can't hide it anymore, it's boring to hide it completely. Kong released some irrelevant death information and clues by the way, to see if the generals have any ideas. Most of the generals thought that the murderer of Jock and Faris was not Kuzana Kainu, but that doesn't mean that these people didn't look at Kuzana Kainu differently during Kong's story. Unlike other generals, Kizaru didn't have the slightest difference. On the contrary, he was a little happy. Kizaru didn't smile on the surface and pretended to be angry, and those who knew him immediately saw the corners of his eyes that were beaming under his sunglasses. Kizaru already knew the news 100%, and Sengoku, who had been observing the Marine generals, knew it. But who did Kizaru's disappearance come from? Was it the guy who wanted to stir up the situation in Marine and profit from it? Kizaru here is a clue. Find a chance where Sengoku intends to go to Kizaru to make a cliché. It can be said that these series of events all appeared after the news that the high level will change in Marine. The main messenger behind these events is definitely not to destroy Marine, but to seek Marine's power and authority. Even the opponent's appetite is not only admiral, but also the position of the marshal. You must know that Sengoku is the first target to deal with. He used some rude tactics to make him lose face at the celebration banquet. Sengoku remembers this sum of money. Pieces of clues are like unraveling puzzle pieces, and Sengoku knows that the clues are related, but he can't do anything about it. However, with Sengoku's sorrow, Kizaru's secret joy, and the surprise of many marine generals, Chinluo, who was disguised as a marine soldier, was really overjoyed. Chinluo had used illusion to control the ensign to find Kong. He went directly to the scene where he had just escaped, 5 minutes faster than Kong. It is human nature to watch and join in the fun. When Chinluo arrived, there were already many other marine soldiers and officers on the Marine One. Fortunately, Chinluo chose a place against the wall at that time. Otherwise, apart from looking down at the wall, Chinluo really couldn't find any other way to hide the twitching smile at the corner of his mouth. At the beginning, Chinluo was still struggling with whose mouth to stab Joke and Faris. Who wanted to kill a 2 or 5 boy, Kizaru in the middle, but he was stunned to finish everything Chinluo had to do next. This superficial marine Kizaru is really going to make me laugh to death. He is so determined to die, and there is such an unpretentious smile. This is because he is afraid that others will not doubt him. Chinluo complained in his heart, just focus on Kizaru's true temperament and ability to do things today, and next time you beat him, it must be lighter. Kizaru's behavior was a pleasant surprise. Chinluo's initial plan was to find a suitable marine general and use illusions to control him to reveal the secrets of Jock and Faris. But even if these are unsuccessful, Chinluo still has a way. Chinluo reckoned that the time should come. Kong must not have thought that he also put some interesting little gifts in the corpse. In short, there is not much time left for Kong. Finally, Kong's long speech was forcibly interrupted by a series of explosions. The explosion took place in a room in Marine One. Thick black smoke came out from the explosion. Kong looked at the direction and distance of the smoke and felt like the corpse he had just left. Kong's face turned pale instantly. The power of the explosion was not great, and the entire warship just shook a little, and there was no breakage or flooding of the warship. It's not that Chinluo's heart is soft-hearted, but he can't hide too many explosive bombs. Because of 3.4, this power is already the limit that a corpse can hide a bomb. Speaking of which, the time bomb as the main detonator was something Chinluo accidentally found on several empty marine warships. It was a special personal collection of a dead captain. Using Marine's relics to blow up Marine's remains is exciting. Chinluo wanted to tell Kong and Sengoku the news. I wonder if they would be so angry that they would cut their belly to death on the spot. This is a provocation, a naked provocation. I don't care where you are hiding right now. Once I catch you, you must die. After receiving the news that the corpse was completely destroyed, Kong's eyes filled with anger suddenly twitched. He opened it, shrewdly shrinking his pupils to a small point, and smashed the railing beside him with a punch with his right hand. Chapter 420 Immortal Reappearance. Is there anything in the world that can make an old man who is also a teacher and a father more angry than losing a disciple? That would probably only make him lose the remains of his disciples. The enraged Marshal Kong looked like a mad demon, not to mention those Rear Admiral Vice Admiral who were so shocked that they didn't dare to say a word, and the onlookers who were far away also dispersed in an instant. After that, whether it was a search or temporary imprisonment, many Marine generals cooperated very well, and no one dared to make a first move against an angry and mad old man. Announced that Marshal Marine summoned Marine generals with the rank of Rear Admiral and above to hold a meeting on Marine One. And on the grounds of checking the internal affairs, Marshal Kong and Sengoku Admiral's personal soldiers ran on various warships to investigate the rooms and peacetime behavior of those who went to the generals. The Marine generals are not in a hurry. They also know that Marshal Kong will not be imprisoning them for a long time. Whether the attackers or relevant suspects are not found, they will be able to return soon. That night, Marshal Kong first released a group of confirmed generals to take charge of patrolling at night, and all 19 generals were released back the next night. As for the result of the investigation, Qin Luo didn't know and didn't care. He left as the siege of Marine dissipated in the first place. Even when Marine finally found a hapless person as a scapegoat, Qin Luo was not surprised at all. Marine has always been skilled at such things. Before leaving, Qin Luo used illusion to rewrite the memory of the Marine soldier he pretended to be. Qin Luo, the attacker, disappeared out of thin air just like the Marine soldier mentioned by Ensign, and there is no trace of them appearing again. The early hours of the night, the Bone Demon Fish did not take advantage of the fact that General Marine was imprisoned in Marine No. 1 in large numbers. No more than 5 Marine soldiers had died before they were found repulsed. The Kraken family also suffered casualties that night. A team of Krakens who were too close to the Marine fleet could not retreat and were caught by Kizaru, who shot himself. In this resistance, the 3 sirens used another talent hidden by the Siren family, the Howl of the Sirens, a mental and sonic attack, which also had no effect. Kizaru, who is incarnated as the light, cannot be captured by the Kraken at all. Soon Kizaru's light speed kick added 3 more souls. While the sky was still white with fish belly, the Marine fleet finally sailed out of this frightening fog. In fact, the atmosphere of the mist is not really that wide, but Qin Luo has always used the ability of the Overlord of the Sea to control the weather at sea, and let the mist run with the Marine fleet. After Qin Luo's goal was achieved, there was no need for Misty to follow the Marine fleet. However, it was different from the high fighting spirit of the Marine fleet when they had just entered the fog. All Marine soldiers were like eggplants hit by frost. During these few days in the fog, Marines have seen sea monsters that no one else has seen a few times in their lifetimes. At least a quarter of them lost their lives in that fog forever. As the fog disappeared from the Marine fleet's field of vision, Qin Luo waved his hand to dissipate the control of the fog. Without Qin Luo's control, the fog dissipated quickly, and the cloud that was still overwhelming before disappeared in an instant. The remaining sea monsters were only 2 timid and cunning creatures, the skeleton demon fish and the kraken. Those kinds of sea monsters that Qin Luo hated the most had basically died out in the previous battles and attacks. Qin Luo also put out the idea of finding trouble with these sea monsters. Just let these sea monsters go back to their own territory, and Qin Luo left after giving the last order. Qin Luo has been staying in the Marine fleet recently. He hasn't seen Laboon for several days. It's time to go back and see Momoshiki. The departure of Marine fleet and Qin Luo brought the sea back to its usual appearance. It was not until night fell and a new moon hung in the air that this tranquility was broken again. The sea rolled like it was boiling, and something was rising from the bottom of the sea. The hazy gecko, the wrecks of ships can be vaguely seen floating on the surface. If Marine and Qin Luo were here, they would have immediately recognized that these were the wrecks of the sunk ghost ships, and a group of undead stood quietly above the wreckage. These undead are broken like the ghost ship, and some of the undead are surrounded by his broken limbs, bones or unloaded heads. These undead and shipwrecks seem to have a special magic power. If you look closely, both the ghost ship and the undead are being repaired automatically. Finally, in front of the entire undead fleet, a few dark shadows appeared, and it was the Marine warship that was pulled into the sea by the tentacles of the deep-sea devil, Paul, in that battle. 9 Marine warships are arranged in a triangle, and the Marine warship in the front is leaning on an undead. This undead is also an acquaintance. From the bone scepter that was shattered to the point where only the head of the stick was left, and the remaining half of his face, it could be vaguely seen that it was Aidu who had disappeared for a while. Aidu's appearance is a bit miserable. Most of the body has disappeared, only the right head and the upper body on the right are still intact. At the wound, the exposed black substance kept squirming, some bones were covered with cracks, and some fine black flesh floated on the edge of the bones. 1 second before the explosion, the deep-sea devil, Paul, who had a premonition of danger, wrapped the bomb 450 with hundreds of tentacles. After the explosion, the tentacles were completely broken, and only part of the head of the deep-sea devil, Paul, was left. But Paul is worthy of being a member of the undead fleet. Even so, Paul pinned his consciousness on the fragments of his head and did not die like a normal creature. In the way of sacrificing tentacles and other flesh and blood, Paul reassembled his body, but the size was basically the same as his descendants, and there were only a dozen new tentacles. It is really 1,000 years of hard work, and a dream is broken. Although Aedu had Paul in front of him, he almost disappeared in the explosion. However, Governor Ae was unable to repair his body any longer, so he could only maintain his current appearance. Everyone, including Chin Luo, thought that the ghost ship had been destroyed. The captain of the undead fleet, the undead who called himself Aedu, was also destroyed in the explosion. I don't want Ae Governor to appear again now, and also bring all the undead fleet together. This undead ability alone is enough to make Chin Luo and Marine re-examine this undead fleet, of course, provided that Marine and Chin Luo know that this undead fleet has been resurrected. Therefore, everything is arranged according to fate, and this undead fleet is destined to stir up the whole great shipping route in the days to come, revealing the secrets that were unknown thousands of years ago.